Chapter 860. During the previous meeting, Lin Yuan did not tell the complete truth. The Great Old One's method of provoking the inner demons of living beings and then turning them into sharp blades was indeed very similar to the Sky Demon, but there was a fundamental difference between the two. The Sky Demon evoked the inner demons of living beings, causing them to constantly sink into their own desires and become numb. Then, he took the opportunity to occupy the other party's physical body, using this physical body to directly affect the material world. On the other hand, the Great Old Ones only used certain methods to evoke the inner demons of living beings, making them do things that they usually wanted to do but did not dare to do. For example, right now, a demon king had brought a group of monsters here. In essence, it was just that they could not stand Lin Yuan, an outsider, riding on their heads. In addition, the various sea demon clans were constantly in conflict. Because of the meeting that Lin Yuan had called earlier, all the sea demons were actually desperately suppressing themselves. Under such circumstances, it was countless times easier to provoke their inner demons than usual. However, the other party was in existence that could even affect the ancestor demon realm powerhouses. As long as Lin Yuan gave them a reminder, the demon kings below and the demonic beasts of lower realms were not challenging in the eyes of the other party. There was no difference in the difficulty level. What happened tonight was still within Lin Yuan's expectations. It was just that the other party had chosen the right time to strike and caught him off guard. But from another perspective, Lin Yuan's goal had been achieved. The battle of ideals could indeed suppress the distorting power of the Great Old Ones, but Lin Yuan knew very well that he was not the one who created the era. He was only relying on the experience of standing on the shoulders of a giant to bring the ideals of another world to this world. He just could not stand this deformed world. Even though he knew very well that this was a world where cultivators existed, ordinary people could only grit their teeth and silently endure no matter how dissatisfied they were. Even if another 1,000 years or 10,000 years passed, they would not be able to overturn the cultivators' ruling position. However, this world was obviously very vast, much more vast than the world Lin Yuan had been in his previous life. The production of all kinds of resources was also incomparably rich. The rich land could provide enough food, and the boundless land was enough for everyone to live on. What determined a person's status should be their own ability and contribution, not some laughable bloodline or cultivation. However, Lin Yuan was just a plagiarist after all. He was just used to the other world and didn't like the current world. It didn't mean that he was a living saint who saved people. Simply wanting to eliminate the Great Old Ones through a battle of ideals was nothing more than a fool's dream. As the classics of his previous life were recited over and over again, this concept would become weaker and weaker until it completely lost its effect. It was impossible to maintain the suppression of the Great Old Ones forever. Thus, the one who was anxious to start the final battle had always been Lin Yuan. Even if the mission was excluded, no one was more anxious than her. She did not use any confidentiality measures to send people to the Sky Martial Continent to ask for reinforcements. Her goal was not to wait for reinforcements, but to let the Great Old Ones know that once the reinforcements were in place, the Great Old Ones would not even have a 30% chance of winning. Thus, they would definitely come. This did not surprise Lin Yuan. Before the main course arrives, it's good to have an appetizer first. Lin Yuan opened her mouth and yawned, as if she did not put these demonic beasts in her eyes. At the same time, outside the Willow Stone Fort, the ancient barbarians expressionlessly looked at the tragic battlefield in front of them. Especially as time passed, the defensive line of the Willow Stone Fort became weaker and weaker. Countless deformed people were either hit by spells or arrows. They let out angry roars and fell down with their fangs bared and claws bared. Under the suppression of a flying restriction, these deformed people all fell to the ground without exception. Such a miserable death, if ordinary soldiers were to see it, they would definitely be afraid to fight. But to the mutants who didn't have much rationality left, this level of casualties was a joke. More mutants stepped on the meat paste formed by their seniors and continued to climb the walls of Willow Stone Fortress. Some of the smarter ones even built a human wall to help their comrades climb to higher places more easily. The morale of the deformed people did not collapse. But the morale of the Willow Stone Fort's defenders was about to collapse. With such a large number of deformed people attacking the Willow Stone Fort, even if they did not do anything, countless demonic beasts would be awakened. Furthermore, they had rung the alarm more than 20 times, but until now, not a single reinforcements had come out from the city. This situation meant that there were only two possibilities. Either there was some big trouble in the city, or the demonic beasts in the city were sleeping like dead pigs, not waking them up even after the alarm rang 20 times. The answer was obvious. After all, those ancestral monster realm big shots did not need to sleep at all. Even if they were on a mental journey, they would not choose to wake up at such a critical moment. One by one, the demon beasts were slaughtered by the mutants. The commander on duty looked around, gritted his teeth, and said, 10 minutes. Hold on for another 10 minutes. If there are no reinforcements, we will retreat. 10 minutes was not long, but to these defenders, it was a bit too long. Even the commander himself was not sure if he could live past 10 minutes. But it couldn't be helped. The Black WIRM's methods were so forceful that it simply caused all the demon beasts to be terrified. Practically every single one of these demon beasts that were responsible for guarding the city had a weakness in the Black WIRM's hands. Once they disobeyed the Black WIRM's orders or dared to have any bold thoughts, what awaited them would be pain and torture that was countless times more terrifying than death. The city could fall, but they could not be deserters. Even if they wanted to retreat, they had to wait until it was time to change shifts. This was the first order that the Black Jiao gave them that they could not disobey. Therefore, he could only hope that he could hold on for another 10 minutes, or that the problem in the city could be resolved within these 10 minutes. Then, the demonic beasts entangled with the unknown enemy in the city would be able to arrive as soon as possible. Why hasn't the city collapsed yet? Ancient E raised his eyebrows slightly. He saw that the commanders of the various defense zones did not choose to retreat in the face of the unstoppable demonic beasts. Instead, they gathered their remaining subordinates and attempted to retake the city walls that were gradually falling. He couldn't help but be startled. These demonic beasts, were they really not afraid of death? Or could it be that he had unknowingly fallen into the Black Jiao's trap? Was the other party simply inviting him into the trap? Ancient E, I have a very uneasy feeling. A great old ruler who was also in human form and looked like a skinny old man walked up to Ancient E and spoke with a grave expression. Chapter 861. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 4 desolate demon realm demonic beast. You have gained 137 attribute points. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 2 desolate demon realm demonic beast. You have gained 89 attribute points. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 7 mountain lord demonic beast. You have gained 50 attribute points. System notifications appeared one after another in his mind. Other than the attribute points gained from killing, there were also all sorts of sea demon material stored in the warehouse. With the help of the system, Lin Yuan could quickly create a batch of powerful demonic beasts that had the bloodlines of various sea demons. Excluding the fact that their growth speed was too slow and they needed Lin Yuan's attribute points to nurture, in terms of bloodlines, they would not be inferior to the various demonic beasts that had the bloodlines of the Dragon Clan. In fact, they might even be superior. Was he one step closer to overthrowing the rule of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and dominating the Endless Sea? Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's face became solemn, and he provocatively hooked the tip of his tail at the remaining sea monsters, and sneered, "To tell you the truth, I am the same as you." I am also a guy who is plagued by inner demons, so I know very well how deadly the existence of inner demons is. Since I am your inner demon, then there is no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides. So when you appear here, the only way to survive is to kill me. Even if you run away now, I have ways to find you. Being taken advantage of by an inner demon and being possessed by the sky demon were two completely different concepts. Although those who were taken advantage of by inner demons would lose part of their rationality, they would only lose their fear and respect. They were still themselves. If it were the sky demon, no matter how many of their companions died, it would not affect them. However, Lin Yuan had decisively entered the blood-boiling state. In addition, he was not weak in the first place. He was determined not to fight the Sea Demon King head-on and focused on killing the weaker demonic beasts of the desolate demon realm. After killing another batch of demonic beasts, the ones that were still alive were obviously terrified. Lin Yuan was not unfamiliar with that expression and gaze. Because he was the same in his previous life. He could only look at his enemy with a hateful gaze. Over and over again, he had overdrawn everything and abandoned his bottom line, but he still couldn't take revenge. When he arrived in this world, with his current strength and achievements, he could easily crush his enemy in his previous life. However, he still couldn't return to the world of his previous life. This caused the inner demons in his heart to grow stronger day by day, and his temperament to become fiercer and fiercer day by day. He was already a typical example. Lin Yuan didn't want Countless himself to treat him as an inner demon in the future. It was too troublesome. It was better to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Lin Yuan had no intention of paying attention to the aberrations that were attacking Willowstone Fortress outside. After all, even the great old ones had arrived on the battlefield. No matter how arrogant he was, he did not think that he could face the ancestor demon realm beings head-on. No matter how much Joss flame power he had, it could not withstand such a burning, not to mention that he did not have much Joss flame power left. Thus, it would be better to hand those guys over to the endless sea. There was no need to put themselves in danger just to show off. What if the fortress was broken through? Then Lin Yuan would use facts to tell them that they were not the only ones who had been plotting in the dark. It was not just these guys who had been taken advantage of by the inner demons who had tampered with the Willowstone Fortress. I wonder how many experts in Willowstone Fortress have broken free from their entanglements, Lin Yuan muttered softly. Although he had various experiences and knowledge brought over from the information explosion era in his previous life, in addition to the almost masochistic training in his previous life, his shrewdness was not inferior to any ambitious and ruthless person. However, he had never dared to truly underestimate those old foxes who had lived for countless years. Naturally, it did not matter when everyone was smiling on the surface. However, when it came to life or the distribution of benefits, even he would not have thought of who would stab him first before the great old ones. The great old ones had seized the opportunity well, but to those old foxes, it was impossible for them to not think that the other party would fight to the death after the team had set off. They would take advantage of the fact that there was still some chance of victory to fight the monsters of the endless sea, rather than waiting for the guardians of the heavenly gate to arrive and wait for death. At most, they would be surprised that the other party had chosen to attack earlier, but they would not panic. As for the great old ones, would they be able to take care of everything? That would be a joke. To put it in a more mysterious way, those who had their inner demons stirred up mostly had weak Tao hearts or had flaws in their Tao hearts. And no matter what, it was impossible for such an existence to cultivate to the realm of a demon king or an ancestor demon. If it wasn't for a particularly strong sense of humiliation and obsession, even demon kings wouldn't be so easily provoked. As for ancestral demon realm bigwigs, even if a few ancestral demons were affected, there wouldn't be too many of them. It was impossible for them to hold back so many ancestral demons. It was just that they were all hiding in their own residences, unwilling to come out and take the lead. Let's see who can't hold back first. Lin Yuan muttered in his heart with a smile that was not a smile. Black Jiao, if you have the guts, fight me head-on. You're even worse than a human when it comes to dodging. A trash like you actually has the guts to call yourself the Blackwater Dragon King in the Tianwu continent. Aren't you afraid that the wind will be too big for your own good? The Demon King's attacks had been cleverly avoided by Lin Yuan through the observation of the Eye of God. At this moment, its eyes were red, and it was panting heavily like an angry bull. It stared fiercely at Lin Yuan. Quite smart. Lin Yuan turned his head to look at the Demon King, and a hint of ridicule appeared in his eyes. Although he had not fought with the Demon King head-on, nearly 80% of his attention was focused on it. Originally, he had planned to rely on inciting the Demon King's frenzied attacks to exhaust its demonic power and physical strength. He did not expect the Demon King to react so quickly. Not only did it not continue to waste his efforts, it even provoked him, hoping to force Lin Yuan to take the initiative to fight it. After a moment of silence, Lin Yuan said with a smile, "Correction, I did not dodge. I was fighting from the beginning to the end. As a Demon King, you brought your subordinates to find trouble with me. In the end, you couldn't even protect your subordinates and could only rage helplessly. What qualifications do you have to question my name as the Dragon King? This is a name that even the ancestor demons of the Endless Sea have to acknowledge. You're courting death." The Demon King's face changed. It could not be bothered to continue resting. It roared crazily and pounced at Lin Yuan. Its heart demon was obviously a kind of jealousy. It was obviously older than Lin Yuan, and its cultivation was higher than Lin Yuan. However, after Lin Yuan arrived on the battlefield, it became a pawn that could only listen to Lin Yuan's orders. It was the same as the Dragon Clan youth from before. They were all trash that was jealous of Lin Yuan. Chapter 862. A Demon King was chasing after him, but Lin Yuan was neither too fast nor too slow. His body was constantly twisting strangely. Even though his speed was not as fast as the Demon King, he was always able to avoid his opponent's attacks. He even reaped the lives of one or two demon beasts of the desolate demon realm and below. He was also constantly mocking the Demon King, lest it wake up and give up this meaningless war of attrition. The body movement of the roaming dragon's 9 transformations was so terrifying. It was definitely not something that ordinary martial arts techniques and footwork could compare to. Even though Lin Yuan was only at the beginner level, he was able to play with the Demon King, who was a realm higher than him, as if he was dancing on the tip of a knife. If this body movement was cultivated to the extreme, it was enough to be compared with the famous magical powers in the untainted world. Shrinking the ground into an inch, so close yet worlds apart. The reason why it was called a magical power and not a body movement was because once it was cultivated to the extreme, it no longer relied on the body to complete the movement. It was a kind of technique that could fold space and turn distance into distance. The body movement was only through various movements to adjust the movement of the muscles and force to increase the speed. However, this magical power already involved the highest space rules. Just a body movement was already so terrifying. Lin Yuan could not help but be more curious about the contents that were engraved in his blood but could not be cultivated with his current conditions. The roaming dragon's 9 transformations was not as simple as just 9 transformations. 9 was the limit of the number. It was derived from the number of 3s in the 6 lines. The cycle was endless. Black Jiao. Die for me. The Demon King's eyes became more and more red. Even the corners of his eyes were beginning to bleed. Lin Yuan even suspected that if this continued, he would be able to anger the Demon King to death. Boom! At this moment, there was a loud explosion. Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly turned cold. The city was breached. So fast. Because he was dealing with the Demon King, Lin Yuan had not been observing the situation outside. However, the defense of the Willow Stone Fortress could at least hold on for another 5 or 6 minutes. This period of time was enough for those old foxes to put aside their little calculations and take the initiative to stand up and face the enemy. However, how long had it been? How could the city be breached? One after another, powerful auras soared into the sky. One after another, monster ancestors and monster kings flew out from their mansions and madly rushed towards the source of the loud noise. Lin Yuan's expression also changed. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly thought of some details and his eyes became playful. He turned his head to look at the flustered and exasperated demon king behind him and sneered, "Whatever happens outside has nothing to do with us. Come, continue." Good words couldn't persuade a damned ghost. In the end, some people were too ambitious and completely ignored his warning. He had previously wondered why the great old ones could grasp the timing so accurately, and why those fellows who had been taken advantage of by the inner demons could draw formations all over the city under the pretext of building fortifications without revealing the slightest bit of news. The demon king did not speak. He only panted and continued to chase after Lin Yuan. After all, Lin Yuan's cultivation was at the 8th level of the desolate demon realm. In addition, after activating the blood boil state, the values on his interface had reached a rather terrifying level. Even if the demon king wanted to catch up to him, he would have to use all his strength. At this moment, the demon king could not be said to be an arrow at the end of its flight. At this moment, the demon king had exhausted most of his physical strength and monster power. Naturally, he would not speak. If he had the strength, he might as well throw a few more punches. However, the surrounding desolate demons and river masters who came with him all changed their expressions. They all looked like they wanted to cry but had no tears. What was in this black Jiao's head? Although they were not Lin Yuan's match, their cultivation was still there. It was not as if they could not see anything. For example, if Lin Yuan wanted to leave the battle, the demon king would not be able to catch up to Lin Yuan even if it risked its life. Even if it chased for a while, it would be hard to say who would kill who. But the problem was that the aberrations had already broken through the city's defenses and triggered the defensive formation. If they did not provide support, after the aberrations poured into this fortress built by the joint efforts of various sea demon clans, all the originally built fortifications would be completely ineffective. The endless sea demon beasts did not have the slightest advantage against the aberrations on flat ground. In addition, they were being harassed by the inner demons, and there were also ambitious people with ulterior motives eyeing them covetously. If this battle was fought, even if the endless sea went all out, it would be very difficult to win, right? This Black Jiao did not quickly leave the battle and go to the front lines to suppress the aberrations. Why did he have to stay here and kill these small fries? Wasn't he crazy? At the same time, Ancient Yi and a group of old dominators had already arrived at the top of the city wall. Ancient Yi's feet were stepping on an incomplete corpse. It was the commander who had ordered them to hold on for another 10 minutes before retreating. Looking at the aberrations pouring into the Willowstone fortress like a tide, Ancient Yi's brows were tightly knitted together. His mind was rapidly calculating what was wrong with this trip. This place was very wrong. It was the clearest about Ziye's methods. Because Ziye was originally a figure of the same era as him. It was just that at that time, he was still a strategist, while Ziye was just an ambitious person who was good at bewitching people and collecting large amounts of cultivation resources for himself. The two could be said to be sworn enemies, but in every battle in that era, he would always be the final victor. It was not simply because his intelligence was higher than Ziye's, but because Ziye only had a few tricks up his sleeve. To others, it was a big trouble, but to Ancient Yi, it was nothing to be afraid of. Ancient Yi did not believe that Ziye's little tricks were so effective that they could suppress all the experts in the Willowstone fortress. But so far, they had not encountered any effective resistance. This was an indisputable fact. But the fact that it was so made Ancient Yi's heart uneasy. It was as if there was an invisible beast hiding in the undefended fortress, waiting for its prey to be delivered to its mouth. More importantly, Ancient Yi was not the only one who felt uneasy. The old dominator named Quang Gu was in existence that was older than it. He was once a commander of the border army. In countless battles with the barbarian tribe and demon beasts, he had honed his intuition and perception that were sharper than that of demon beasts. According to the clues in the history books, this honed intuition had saved Quang Gu no less than 20 times. Previously, Wild Bone had told Ancient Yi that his intuition was warning him not to step into the fortress, or else his fate would be very miserable. If it was only Ancient Yi alone, he could explain it away as overthinking. But what if Wild Bone's intuition was added to the mix? Chapter 863. What kind of trap did that Black Jiao set up? To be able to make a tiger general like Wild Bone have such an uneasy premonition when he had the upper hand? According to the original plan, as long as Ziyi incited the existence of the inner demon to hold back all the high-level combat power of the Endless Sea's side, they could quickly break through the defensive line of the Willow Stone Fortress. Then, they would gather their forces and charge into the city, killing those troublesome ancestral demons one by one, slowly tilting the battle in their favor. They could even decide the outcome of the battle and completely defeat the Endless Sea's Yao beasts. However, reality gave them a loud slap in the face. The defense line of the Willow Stone Fortress was not that easy to break through. Even if it was attacked by the aberrations and there were no reinforcements, the city guards on duty did not collapse as expected. Instead, they quickly adjusted their mentality and organized the defense line again. As they were not worried about the unforeseen events that would happen after a long time, these old dominators even personally took action and broke through a considerable portion of the defense line. Otherwise, it would have taken them at least 10 minutes to break through these city guards. In a sense, they had already lost. No matter which era it was, there was a rule to follow. High-level cultivators and high-level monsters had their own battlefields. Unless the low-level monsters provoked them, they could not take the initiative to attack. Previously, when the monsters of the Endless Sea gathered here, although there were many experts, when the monsters and aberrations fought, both sides had a tacit understanding not to send experts to kill the low-level monsters and aberrations. However, tonight, they took the initiative to break this rule. This also meant that the monsters in the Endless Sea didn't need to talk about rules anymore. They had more experts on their side. As long as they could hold back the Great Old Ones, the other high-level monsters could directly kill the aberrations. In the blink of an eye, they could turn the aberrations into generals without an army. Therefore, there must be no deviation in the plan. They must successfully behead some of the ancestral demons that were held back and make up for the difference in combat power between the two sides. How dare you! Using your cultivation to kill my people, pay with your life. With a roar, the first ancestral demon rushed out from the shadows. Gu Yi's expression suddenly turned ugly. He turned his head to glare at the stunned Ziyi and swallowed the vulgarities that were at the tip of his tongue. Soon after, a second, a third, more and more ancestral monsters flew over. Some of the Yao kings didn't even bother to greet their opponents. They didn't care what realm their opponents were at. Instead, they unleashed all sorts of innate abilities and origin arts to slaughter the tide of mutants. At this moment, Gui no longer had the mood to blame Ziyi. After all, there was no point in investigating who was responsible after the incident. The urgent matter at hand was to think of a way to deal with the demon ancestors who weren't entangled, or even turn the tide of the battle and defeat the Endless Sea's demon beasts. Ancient Yi was silent for a while. He gritted his teeth and said, "I didn't expect the Black Jiao to be able to do this. However, since things have already come to this point, we can only take a gamble. Don't worry about the heavenly punishment anymore. Let's release our original strength and see how many demon beasts we can distort. Otherwise, we're all finished." No, just as Wild Bone opened his mouth and uttered a single word, almost all the great old overlords released their original strength. In an instant, a huge distortion force surged out like a tide. It was as if they wanted to turn the willow stone fortress into a demon nest like the one they were stationed in before. The twisting power was so dense that it was almost corporeal. Like purple sea snakes, they wriggled their bodies towards the demonic beasts that were fighting. Even the ancestral demon, who had expected this, couldn't help but stop in his tracks. He looked at the twisting power with fear, not daring to take another step forward. Even with their level of cultivation, they might not be able to withstand such a dense distortion force. Even if they didn't become mutants on the spot, they would be trapped in the purple demonic domain and be squeezed dry bit by bit until their minds completely collapsed and they fell to the same level as the mutants. Too careless. Many ancestral monster ancestors cursed inwardly. Looking at the demon kings and desolate demons fighting with the mutants, their eyes were filled with pain. Even for a force as strong as the dragon palace of the four seas, the demon kings and desolate demons could be considered as the mainstay. Losing one of them would cause them to feel pain for a long time, let alone these demon kings and desolate demons that were gathered by the various sea demon clans. There was no saving them now. After all, when they came, no one cared about the Black Jiao. If the Black Jiao wasn't here to suppress the distortion force, they would be completely helpless. Moreover, with such a dense distortion force, even the Black Jiao might not be able to suppress it. The endless sea is finished. A demon ancestor lowered his head dejectedly. His eyes were filled with sorrow. Although the other demon ancestors didn't show it so obviously, their eyes were filled with fear and panic. Ah! One of the great old overlords suddenly screamed. The origin energy that was flowing out like a flood paused, and its distorted body rolled wildly on the ground. It was as if an invisible flame was burning its body and soul. After a few more breaths, this great old one completely stopped moving. Strangely, its body was turning into pitch-black charcoal bit by bit. It was swept away by the undercurrent at the bottom of the sea. It turned into fine powder and drifted away. Was this a king joke? Burned to death at the bottom of the sea. The group of demon ancestors looked at each other, as if they couldn't understand how the other party had died. Their gazes swept back and forth, becoming more and more confused, as if they were trying to find out who was behind the death of the great old one. I remember now, this is a heavenly tribulation. According to the ancient records of my clan, when a living being does something that heaven and earth can't tolerate, it will attract a heavenly tribulation. An ancestral dragon's vertical eyes lit up. He said excitedly, "These aberrations forcefully released the distortion force in an attempt to pollute us. This kind of behavior is seen as an unforgivable evil by the heavens. Therefore, a heavenly tribulation was sent to punish them." The existence of heavenly tribulation was never a secret. It was especially so for the Four Seas dragon clan that inherited from the great desolate world. They didn't realize it before because this was an incomplete world. Not to mention immortality, it was extremely difficult to live for tens of thousands of years. Naturally, there weren't many cultivators or demon beasts that could attract a heavenly tribulation. This was also the first time they saw such a thing. Chapter 864. Let's release our demonic power and divine power as well. We don't expect to be able to block these distorted forces. As long as we can buy enough time, they will naturally be killed by the heavenly tribulation. The ancestral dragon shouted and took the lead to release his pure demonic energy and divine energy. He took the lead to collide with the twisting energy that was like a purple sea. In just an instant, his energy was greatly contaminated. It could even be said that in the blink of an eye, his decades of hard work had been destroyed. After all, he could only forcefully disperse the contaminated demonic energy. He did not have the courage to take it back into his body. The other ancestral monster ancestors did the same. In a life and death situation, none of them dared to be stingy with their strength. Ancient Yi's expression changed slightly as he gritted his teeth and cursed in his heart. The Black Jiao definitely had other tricks up his sleeves. It knew very well that as long as it released its power of origin to forcibly distort the sea monsters here, it would definitely attract a heavenly tribulation. Therefore, when they did similar things before, they either released their power of origin bit by bit to transform the sea into a distorted land, or they slowly distorted the sea monsters through mental pollution. They had never done anything like forcibly distorting the sea monsters. However, the heavenly tribulation shouldn't have come so quickly. At the same time that they released their power of origin, the heavenly tribulation had already arrived. Other than the guy who was burned to death by the fire tribulation, all of them were going through the tribulation. They were just barely able to withstand it and didn't lose their lives. However, as the fire tribulation grew stronger, more and more of them died. After passing the fire tribulation, there was still the water tribulation and the wind tribulation to face. According to the ancient records, after passing these three tribulations, one could become an immortal or a god and live forever. Looking at the entire Sky Martial continent, there were many cultivators with high cultivation levels who attracted the heavenly tribulation, but there was not a single one who could pass the heavenly tribulation. Cultivation was to go against the will of the heavens and to pursue immortality. It was a great evil to the heavens. They broke free from the river of time and descended into the world, vainly attempting to destroy the era. However, the heavenly tribulation wasn't something that would happen in time. It was just like the saying, good will be rewarded with good, and evil will be punished with evil. Even if someone did something intolerable and triggered the heavenly tribulation, there would still be a reaction process. They had only released the power of the origin and had not sowed any evil consequences, yet they had already started to undergo the heavenly tribulation. How could this be justified? It was as if the heavenly tribulations had been waiting here all along, and as soon as they made a move, they immediately suffered retribution. Saying that it was the Black Jiao's doing seemed to be a little flattering. After all, the power of the heavenly street was not something that could be used by ordinary people. No matter how deep the Black Jiao's calculations were, it was impossible for him to get the will of the world to deal with them. Otherwise, why would the Black Jiao cooperate with these monsters in the endless sea? He could have easily killed them with a wave of his hand and sent down the heavenly tribulation. However, the heavenly tribulation came so quickly that it definitely couldn't be described as a coincidence. Ancient E, what do we do now? Stop and run, or, at this moment, Ziye's eyeball-shaped body had already started to turn into a charred black color. It was obvious that he could not hold on any longer. He could not help but look anxiously at the most powerful think tank in their group, hoping to ask for a way to save his life. Let's do it. Ancient Barbarian's expression darkened, and he released even more of his origin energy. He coldly said, either the heavenly tribulation doesn't come, or if it does, it will be impossible to avoid it. You can only rely on your cultivation to endure it. Apart from that, there is no other way to survive. You mother asterisk cur, Ziye's expression changed. The pain of being burned by the heavenly fire almost caused his mind to collapse. Before he could finish cursing, he forcefully swallowed it. Ancient Barbarian frowned with some dissatisfaction. He coldly said, if it wasn't for you making a mistake and causing so many demon ancestors to be here waiting for us to come, how would we end up like this? You still have the face to talk. At this point, he cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, since we're going to die anyway, even if we die, we can't let these demon beasts of the endless sea have it easy. Increase the power of the origin energy. Before we die, we have to get enough of them. Ruthlessness completely appeared on this former general's face. Every wise person's greatest pain was being dragged down by a useless teammate, causing a perfect plan to have to be modified by force. If things went wrong, not only would this modification not achieve the desired effect, it might even cause the person to lose his life. Ziyi was obviously that pig-like teammate. However, since things had come to this point, the demon beasts of the endless sea and the great old ones definitely could not coexist. Before they died, a few of them could be considered as avenging themselves. Under the threat of the heavenly tribulation, ancient barbarian had completely given up on living. But, Kwanggu, why are you still here? Ancient barbarian suddenly turned his head and thought of Kwanggu, who had not used his origin energy, and a bitter smile appeared on his face. This battle was completely lost. Among the great old ones, only Kwanggu had not used his origin energy. The rest were facing the baptism of the heavenly tribulation. Death was only a matter of time. However, if there was still Kwanggu left, they would only die once. Their great cause could still be accomplished. After they died, they could still hide from the will of the world and obtain a chance to reincarnate. If they could awaken their innate wisdom and overcome the mystery of being in the womb, they could even return to this world without any hidden dangers. Ancient barbarian had no intention of blaming Kwanggu. After all, Kwanggu had already expressed his uneasy premonition before. When the demon beasts of the endless sea appeared to block them, Kwanggu spoke again and tried to stop them from releasing their origin energy to pollute the Willow Stone Fortress. However, ancient barbarian did not give Kwanggu a chance to finish his words. At this point, could ancient barbarian blame Kwanggu for speaking slowly? Kwanggu smiled bitterly and shook his head. His voice was mournful. All of you must die. As soon as his voice fell, countless milky white lights suddenly lit up in the dark Willow Stone Fortress. Then, a mixture of different voices slowly sounded. It was the scriptures that Lin Yuan had read during the Battle of Ideologies. However, this time, in the fortress, there were countless voices singing these scriptures. It was no longer Lin Yuan alone facing the entire group of great old ones. As the singing became louder and louder, under First Flood Dragon's lead, countless gray-scaled Flood Dragon people walked out of the white lights. Teleportation formation. I see. Ancient barbarian's eyes flashed with a touch of understanding. He smiled bitterly. So the most dangerous thing in the Willow Stone Fortress is not the demon ancestors, but the demon beasts who use Black Zhao's ideologies to fight against us. If we are caught off guard, we will be trapped and even completely destroyed. Chapter 865. The New Era and the Old Era, two completely different concepts collided with each other. In just a moment, the power of distortion that the ancestor demons could barely resist and still could not stop was shaken back a distance of 16 to 17 feet. It was almost directly under the feet of a group of great old ones. Fortunately, it did not directly hit back their power of origin. Whether it was Lin Yuan or the gray-scaled Flood Dragon person, they were not the true pioneers of the new era, but the true inheritors. In this kind of battle where realm did not count, even the newly born gray-scaled Flood Dragon person could contribute a part of their strength, suppressing the great old ones with an absolute advantage in numbers. Just like the old era was destined to be overthrown by the new era, this unstoppable power was almost unstoppable. The faces of Ancient E and the other great old ones became abnormally ugly. The heavenly tribulation was not a power that they could resist. They had fought with their backs against the wall, but they had only managed to exchange a group of Monster King Realm and Desolate Monster Realm monster beasts. This kind of battle situation was not even as good as a real battle. After all the scheming, the ones who lost the most miserably were the great old ones who had the upper hand and had the upper hand. Wild Bone, retreat. Ancient E roared with a ferocious expression. The only one who did not release the power of distortion, Wild Bone, was now the hope of the entire village. As long as they could overturn the new era, everything could be reversed. Even if their souls were scattered by the heavenly tribulation, Wild Bone could still cut off a part of the long river of time in the future and salvage them from a certain time period. After instilling memories into them, they could be considered as reborn. Even if the world's will was ruthless, it would not be ruthless to the fire seed of an era, because the world needed to evolve. Only a constantly changing world had the possibility of continuous evolution. Formation. Demon subduing formation, get ready. Don't let a single one escape. Wild Bone smiled bitterly and did not speak, but a roar in the common language of the Tianwu continent came from the distance. Turning his head, he could see human cultivators dressed in different clothes frowning as they used their gang cheese to push away the surrounding seawater. At the same time, they took out all kinds of weapons, instruments, talismans, formation plates, and other things that they had brought with them, completely blocking off their escape route. Some people kept on muttering softly, but every time their lips opened and closed, it would make the distorting power in the surroundings fade a little. The corners of Wild Bone's mouth twitched as he revealed a bitter smile. Actually, when we set foot on this fortress, my intuition told me that our path of survival was almost cut off. If we had forced our way out then, more than half of us would have been able to survive. But now, I'm the only one who still has the ability to fight. Do you think I'll be able to break out of here? Wild Bone replied with a bitter smile. Seeing the human cultivators get into formation, the barbarians had a bitter smile on their faces and sighed softly. They had to face the three tribulations of fire, water, and wind, not the thunder tribulations that were created after the immortals established the heavenly court and the thunder department. Otherwise, if they rushed into the crowd with a thunder tribulation cloud above their heads, they could still cause effective damage and force those cultivators to disperse. However, the heavenly tribulations that came from the worlds will test were all tribulations that were born from the inside out. In essence, it was not something that later cultivators could resist with a few treasures. Or, if one's physique was a little stronger, they could not even use treasures. If one did not meet any of the criteria to become an immortal, only death would await them. The only one who would be affected was the person undergoing the tribulation. Not to mention bringing lightning to crash into people. In their current state, even an ordinary person with a chopper would be able to send them on their way. Wild Bone stood in place and thought for a moment. Then, his thin body slowly turned around and rushed towards the formation of the human cultivators. At the same time, his right hand, which was originally thin and wrinkled like tree bark, began to fill with blood as he rushed out. His skin began to stretch and his arm continued to grow. In the blink of an eye, his arm had become larger than his entire body. On top of that, his arm was covered with moving orange eyes that looked very evil. The situation had reached this point. The other great old ones had lost their fighting strength. Wild Bone was being attacked by both the monsters of the Endless Sea and the Heavenly Gate Guardians. In addition, the gray-scaled flood dragon person was reciting the classics from Lin Yuan's previous life, so he could not use the power of distortion. Even if he had the fighting strength of an ancestor demon, he could only choose to wait for death or actively seek death. On the other hand, the mutated Wild Bone was ferocious. He was almost single-handedly suppressing the Elysium Guardians who were in formation. Coupled with his terrifying intuition, he was always able to accurately avoid the area of influence of the talismans and formation plates. Even if he accidentally broke into the area, he would enter the area with the least threat because he had no choice. It would not take long for him to kill his way out. He single-handedly forced all the Heavenly Gate Guardians to retreat nearly 100 meters. He had used up countless talismans and magic treasures before he could barely kill this tyrannical Great Old One. It was very obvious that when it said that all the Great Old Ones would break out of the encirclement together, at least half of them would be able to escape. From the combat power that it had displayed, half of them would be able to escape. Even if the goblin beasts of the Endless Sea and the Guardians of the Heavenly Gate attacked them together, if they wanted to escape and did not continue fighting, close to 80% of them would be able to escape. The ancestor demons who stayed in the Willowstone Fortress were slightly stunned. They looked at the unlucky ones who were crushed by Wild Bone and subconsciously shivered. If Wild Bone had chosen to attack the Willowstone Fortress instead of the Heavenly Gate Guardians who were in formation, they would have to pay 10 times the price of the Heavenly Gate Guardians. After all, although their fighting strength was not inferior to the Heavenly Gate Guardians, they did not have formation plates, talismans, or other supporting tools. In a situation where each of them had their own ulterior motives, they would not be able to fight to the death with Wild Bone. Even if they fought, they might not necessarily win, and the demon kings and desolate demons would suffer even more casualties. As for why Wild Bone charged towards the Heavenly Gate Guardians who were more difficult to deal with, after all, after the Willow Stone Fortress, they would be at the rear of the monsters of the Endless Sea. Not only were there patrolling monsters everywhere, but there were also teleportation formations between the various sea regions. If Wild Bone had entered the other sea regions like an iron fool, he would have died even faster. Instead, if he escaped back to the area that the Great Old Ones once occupied, he might have a chance of survival. Black Jiao, you win. After Wild Bone died in battle, Ancient Barbarian sneered. His eyes rolled as if he was thinking about something. Chapter 866. A moment later, the armored Jiao One walked up to Ancient Yi and expressionlessly said, "Our Dragon King is currently busy catching rats. He told me to tell you to extinguish any thoughts you have. Before he completely exterminates all of you, he will definitely not leave the Endless Sea." Hearing this, Ancient Barbarian was slightly startled, then the corners of his mouth rose, his lips slightly opened, as if he was saying something, but also as if it was just a meaningless twitching of his muscles. However, before he could even spit out a single syllable, he had already turned into a charred corpse, being washed into fine powder by the undercurrent of the sea, slowly drifting towards the unknown sea. In this battlefield, other than the gray-scaled flood dragon people and human cultivators, the remaining survivors were all monsters of the desolate demon realm and above. With their hearing, although they couldn't hear what Ancient Yi didn't say in the end, they could hear Jiao One's words clearly. Before he completely exterminates all of you, the Black Jiao will definitely not leave the Endless Sea. There didn't seem to be any problem with this sentence at first. After all, the principle of eliminating evil was universal in that world. The Endless Sea's demonic beasts were naturally worried that the Great Old Ones hadn't been completely wiped out. If one or two of them had escaped, they would hide for a period of time before making a comeback. They wouldn't be so lucky every time that a nemesis like the Black Flood Dragon would appear. Although the sea demons of each ethnic group had their own plans, most of them wanted to take this opportunity to weaken the power of other ethnic groups after Lin Yuan and the old rulers had a battle of ideas. Even if they could not dominate the Endless Sea, it would be good for their own ethnic group to occupy a few more sea areas. They fought the old rulers with the idea that even if they could not dominate the Endless Sea, it would be good for their ethnic group to occupy a few more sea areas. However, no one could deny that if it wasn't for the Black Jiao, the sea demons of the Endless Sea would have already been exterminated. If Lin Yuan wanted to stay and exterminate the aberrations, they would naturally agree and fully cooperate. However, after thinking about it carefully, they felt that this sentence didn't sound right. When would it be exterminated? Were the aberrations really the only ones that were exterminated? In this war with the old rulers, all the sea demon clans had suffered losses. This was especially true for some of the sea monster clans that had barely managed to rank among the top sea monster clans in the past. Even their only ancestral monster clans had died. These sea monster clans would undoubtedly become fat sheep in the eyes of other sea monster clans that had not suffered such great losses. After a series of suppression, it was likely that their sea monster clans would be wiped out, let alone protect their former territories. After all, for those clans that had lost their only demon ancestor, if they had died in the hands of the old dominators, it would still be fine. There would always be some sympathy. However, everyone would maintain restraint and not really let these sea demon clans be exterminated or starved. They would leave the sea areas and benefits that were suitable for their current strength. Otherwise, if the Endless Sea were to encounter a similar crisis again, who would be foolish enough to sacrifice themselves? However, the clans behind the only demon ancestor who had died at the hands of a mysterious expert because they had tried to stop Lin Yuan from carrying out a battle of ideas would probably not receive such good treatment. After all, everyone had suffered heavy losses. If they didn't snatch the resources accumulated by the other clans, how could they quickly cultivate the next generation and fight for more benefits while the other clans were suffering heavy losses? The war would continue in the following days. However, when it came to distributing benefits, due to the existence of the aberrations, the Black Jiao would definitely be able to get a share. With these resources, the sea monsters under his command would probably be even more powerful. In addition, the Black Jiao had already established a connection with the Sea Monster Guild. With the cooperation of the Brave Crab Clan, the Evil Dragon Camp, the Gray-Scaled Flood Dragon People, and the members of the Sea Monster Guild, the trade city was almost completed. It would not take long before it could officially open for business. Judging from the means that the Black Jiao had previously displayed, this city built on the seabed would sooner or later be like a nail firmly embedded in the endless sea. It would create terrifying benefits for him and affect the power structure of the entire endless sea. Some of the sea monsters' eyes were shining brightly, while some sea monsters' eyes were filled with worry. However, most of the sea monsters' eyes were filled with regret. After all, as long as the aberrations were not completely cleaned up, Lin Yuan would not leave. Even if he wanted to leave, the sea monsters of the endless sea would not let him go. If this process took a long time, then the rise of the gray-scaled flood dragon people and the brave crab clan could be said to be a matter of certainty. Among them, most of them had hesitated before and did not board Lin Yuan's ship. Now, if they went to him again, the price would not be the same as before. The first brave crab clan to eat crabs had sold their entire clan. Although it was because of the young clan leader, who could prove that Tai Mu's original intention was not like this. During the negotiation, if the Black Jiao insisted on this point, should these sea monsters, who wanted to rely on the Black Jiao, hand over their family's assets? Although all the sea monsters knew that the Black Jiao's future path was definitely going to be upward, after all, he had a monstrous aptitude, a powerful background, and connections with various forces. Although there were pros and cons, on the whole, the Black Jiao had never suffered any losses since he became famous. Except for the benefits that he voluntarily gave away, whoever wanted to take more would inevitably become a stepping stone for the Black Jiao. However, strictly speaking, the Black Jiao's ship was really not a good ship. Otherwise, even if they took out all their assets, the Brave Crab Clan would definitely not be the only Brave Crab Clan that boarded the ship. The fundamental reason was that Lin Yuan, the Black Jiao, was not the overlord of the endless sea. No matter how strong his background was, as long as he did not dominate the endless sea, he would have to leave the endless sea sooner or later. At that time, no matter how big his foundation was, it would be divided by the other sea monsters. Once they boarded Lin Yuan's ship, they would either support Lin Yuan to dominate the endless sea, like how the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas replaced the Whale Clan, or assist the Gray-Scaled Flood Dragon Clan to replace the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Otherwise, when Lin Yuan left, they would either follow Lin Yuan to live in a completely unfamiliar place, or they would certainly suffer, waiting for the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas to swallow them up and annihilate them. Among these sea monster clans with complicated thoughts, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas was the most worried. Even if they were very clear that once they left the Black Jiao behind, their ruling rights would be shaken, they could not ignore the remnants of the aberrations that might exist. After all, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was currently in a precarious situation and could not withstand a second attack. After a series of battles, out of the 6 dragon gods, 2 were dead, and 1 was seriously injured. More than half of their top fighting strength had been lost. In addition to the demon kings and desolate demons that they had previously lost, it could be said that the losses were disastrous. Chapter 867. Today, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was no doubt strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Their comprehensive strength was far inferior to the Sea Demon Guild and the monsters in the outer sea. If they wanted to call themselves the overlord of the endless sea, they had to consider whether the other sea demon clans had any objections. If Black Jiao insisted on being enemies with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, they were not afraid of Black Jiao, but they were worried that once Black Jiao started, the other sea demon clans would realize the nature of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, which was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. They were afraid that they would immediately be attacked by the other sea demon clans. The old and new grudges that had accumulated over the years would all be settled at once. Not a single one of the dragon clan of the four seas would be left alive. No matter how strong the dragon clan of the four seas was, it was a thing of the past. Now, the various sea demon clans had grown up. A considerable number of them had even left the dragon clan of the four seas and established their own clans in some sea areas of the endless sea. Now, they were eyeing the throne of the overlord. In the past, the 6 dragon gods could not protect the shaky prestige of the dragon clan of the four seas. Now, there were only 3 dragon gods left. The key was that Black Jiao's background was too mysterious and powerful. It was originally only Black Jiao who could bully them. If they touched Black Jiao, they might be exterminated. This kind of sullen feeling had always been given to other sea demon clans or coastal humans by the dragon clan of the four seas. This time, it was the other way around. They finally understood why the dragon clan of the four seas was so unpopular. While the monsters of the endless sea were worried, Lin Yuan was still in his house with the demon king. With the help of the eye of the god, he had already confirmed the fact that the great old ones had been defeated. What he had to do next was to wait for the countdown of the second stage of the mission to end and receive the system reward. The matter of laying a foundation in the endless sea had already been put on the agenda. Once he was on the right track, he would leave the endless sea. After all, although he was walking the path of the totem ancient god, if he did not take the power of incense, how different would he be from a fool? According to the records in the Book of Life, a normal god should cultivate believers, develop their church, absorb faith, give back faith, and cultivate believers in a cycle. This kind of god's path could be considered normal, but it could also be considered abnormal. It was about long-term and sustainable development. The longer a god existed, the stronger their believers would be. Powerful believers could enter different worlds to develop their churches and cultivate more believers. Then, the god would give back a portion of the power of incense to the believers who performed well. At the same time, it would strengthen the believers and encourage other believers to improve. However, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth would become less and less. Every once in a while, there would be a period of decline. For existences like the gods, it did not matter if there was no oxygen, but without spiritual energy, they would definitely not be able to survive. Most of the gods who walked this path died in this way. After all, without spiritual energy or without enough spiritual energy, the gods could not descend to the human world. Those believers who worked hard time and time again to no avail would naturally give up their faith. They would even think that the god they believed in had died. However, the period when spiritual energy of heaven and earth was restored could be said to be quite long. It would take at least 5,000 years. Without the blessing of the gods, no mortal could live for such a long time. Over time, the line of faith would be broken, and the sleeping gods would naturally fall. For example, the ancient lizard god could wake up because it still had some remaining faith, so it was not completely dead. This was also the reason why it had shamelessly wanted to take advantage of Lin Yuan's merit. The so-called ancient totem god was like harvesting leeks. The gods who walked this path were similar to the demon beasts at the peak of the ancestor demon realm. Although they could also absorb the power of incense and use it effectively, it was a one-time resource. Once it was used up, it would be gone. The next time they used it, they would have to think of a way to harvest more leeks. Moreover, the unique sacrificial ritual was an ability that ordinary gods could not imitate. They could obtain the power of incense through transactions. In other words, even if the world's decline came, as long as they could go to other worlds with spiritual energy, the ancient totem god would not die and could continue harvesting leeks. However, gods like the ancient totem god would not be restricted. This was because instead of saying that their sacrificial ritual was a sacrifice to heaven and earth, it would be better to say that they were making transactions with other living beings according to the rules. The power of incense they earned was just a reward for being a middleman. Lin Yuan was a middleman who had not yet become a god. He still had to complete the sacrificial ritual through the system's channels. He was like a middleman of middlemen. Even if there was a transaction, the system would get the biggest share in the end. Whether it was the heavenly axiom or Hongjun, they could destroy the ancient totem gods physically. However, they could never grasp their weakness and use them for their own purposes. If they encountered a more powerful ancient totem god, such as an existence like the ancestral dragon, they could only find a place to seal him. There was no way to kill him. During the Warring States period, the ancestral dragon even came out as Ingjing to cause a ruckus. Lin Yuan rejected the route arranged by the system. He did not want to encounter believers being absorbed by other gods, or the end of the world's decline, or a series of events arranged by the system to cut off his line of faith. If that happened, how would he be different from a tool? The northern frontier was his foundation. He had to manage it well. If he left for too long, those fellows who were behaving honestly now would bare their fangs. Why bother? Weren't they all leaks? As for the problem of the city of trade being divided up by the endless seas monsters after he left, Lin Yuan just wanted to laugh. Just like the dragon clan of the Four Seas who had been in the position of overlord for a long time, even if they were at a disadvantage, they were used to ordering the other sea demon clans around. Although those sea demon clans who wanted to rebel against the dragon clan of the Four Seas said that they were not convinced, they were still enslaved deep in their hearts. Therefore, before they were sure whether Lin Yuan could win against the dragon clan of the Four Seas, most of the sea demon clans did not dare to bet for fear of losing everything. Who said that the dragon clan of the Four Seas was the overlord when Lin Yuan was not here? Now, would the dragon clan of the Four Seas dare to bare their fangs against the Sea Demon Guild? They would not dare to even if they had the guts. The city of trade was tied to the Sea Demon Guild. If the dragon clan of the Four Seas reached out, it was equivalent to snatching food from the tiger's mouth. If even the dragon clan of the Four Seas could not get a share, then the other sea demon clans could not even think about it. The problem that Lin Yuan had to solve had always been how to subdue the large idle forces that he had tied to the pirate ship, so that they would remain obedient when he was not in the endless sea. Was it important whether he could win against the dragon clan of the Four Seas or not? Come on, I'm almost out of strength. Come on. Lin Yuan teased the silly Demon King while quickly thinking about this problem that he had to face. Chapter 868. Lin Yuan had never paid attention to the dragon race of the Four Seas. After all, they were a complete race, and they would learn to be afraid once they were defeated. Every branch was closely related to the interests of the whole. No matter how tempting the interests in front of them were, they would think twice before they acted. However, the Sea Demons Guild was not like that. It was just a massive interest group. Behind every honorary chairman stood one or several large races. In addition, there were wandering sea demons who licked blood for their own interests. The entire Sea Demons Guild was like a machine. Even if you tore off its hands, it could still hit you with a hammer without any expression. His original plan to pull the Sea Demons Guild into the trade city was to use their power to fight against the dragon race of the Four Seas and the Outer Sea Demons. However, the Outer Sea Demons were not involved in this at all. Furthermore, the Outer Sea and the Deep Sea were two completely different concepts. Even the dragon race of the Four Seas found it difficult to contact the true leaders of the Outer Sea Demons. If there was no need, they were not willing to intervene in the Deep Sea. But now, even if the dragon race of the Four Seas was willing to work together with Lin Yuan, the problem was that the dragon race of the Four Seas, which had suffered heavy losses, was no longer an equal opponent in the eyes of the Sea Demons Guild. If the Sea Demons Guild was willing, they could even overthrow the rule of the dragon race of the Four Seas at any time and become the uncrowned king of the Deep Sea region. As for living in peace, everyone would naturally be happy, but that was obviously impossible. The existence of the Sea Demons Guild was to earn benefits. When the trade city only had potential, the Sea Demons Guild could obediently take a few mouthfuls of soup. However, once the trade city became a gold-swallowing beast like the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, the Sea Demons Guild would definitely have evil thoughts. How could they deal with such hungry wolves? The simplest method was to pay the power of incense and hire system hosts who had free time to descend to this world. They would then forcefully kill around and kill the power structure of the endless sea to the point where all parties were balanced. However, this was treating the symptoms and not the root cause. Not to mention the price of 1 million incense in exchange for 1 minute of their time to attack. Even if Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and emptied his savings at the northern frontier, the outer sea demons would become a big problem. Once they killed their way through the endless sea, wouldn't the guardians of the heavenly gates be a problem? How could he have so much incense? Money and silk moved people's hearts. Not to mention the more precious training resources. Just as Lin Yuan was deep in thought, his swimming body paused slightly, revealing an opening. The red-eyed demon king was overjoyed. It had chased after the black Jiao for so long, and almost all the demon beasts it had brought with it had died at the hands of the black Jiao. Other than being powerless and furious, there was nothing it could do. But now, it was different. Now that Black Jiao had exposed this weakness, it was 100% sure that it could severely injure Black Jiao. Once he interrupted the Black Jiao's strange swimming rhythm, wouldn't he be at its mercy? Claw attack. The anger of being toyed with for so long, the grievance of having all its subordinates killed, and all kinds of negative emotions erupted at this moment. The Demon King could even feel that its current state was extremely mysterious. This claw attack could be said to be the strongest attack it had ever made in its life. If it couldn't make another breakthrough in the future, it could even be said to be the strongest attack it had ever made in its life. The corners of the Demon King's mouth widened, revealing a sinister smile. It was as if he could already see the Black Flood Dragon being split into two by his claws. You should know that although I have the ability to toy with you, with my current strength, I don't have the ability to kill you or stop you from escaping in a direct confrontation. If you choose to escape when I kill all your subordinates, I can only watch helplessly. But you've been blinded by anger and wasted so much time here. However, the moment the claw attack was launched, Lin Yuan didn't dodge. Instead, he slowly turned his head and gave the Demon King a look of pity. Pity? That's not right. The alarm bells in the Demon King's heart rang wildly. How could this Black Jiao have such a look in his eyes when he was about to die? And what did he mean by those words just now? Buzz! The Demon King's claw attack hit a layer of golden light screen. The thin golden light screen didn't seem to have any space or power. Even through the golden light, one could clearly see the black scales on Lin Yuan's body. However, after taking the Demon King's attack head-on, this layer of light screen only rippled a little. After confirming that the Demon King's attack had completely absorbed it and that it didn't have any other moves, it slowly turned into golden light spots and dissipated into the sea. Then, an extremely terrifying power emerged from the void. It directly grabbed the Demon King by the throat and lifted him up. It was as if he wasn't a Demon King, but a defenseless little chick. The Demon King didn't know what was holding him by the throat, but Lin Yuan, as a false god, saw it clearly. The clear golden divine power rapidly condensed in the void. In almost the blink of an eye, the golden barrier in front of Lin Yuan formed a giant hand made entirely of divine power. It easily lifted the Demon King up. If the owner of this hand of divine power wanted to, there was no difference between crushing the Demon King and crushing a little chick. Ancestral demon, or rather, he was one of the best among the ancestral demon kings. Although he was still a distance away from becoming a true god, he was able to refine the power of incense into such pure divine power and use it freely. Such a terrifying ability was something that even the remaining 4 dragon gods of the Dragon God Temple might not necessarily possess. Blackwater Dragon King, this is the first time we meet, but you seem to owe me a big favor. As a frivolous voice sounded, a pale hand cut open the void. Immediately after, a young man who looked to be about 13 or 14 years old walked out from the crack in the void. He gently waved his hand, and a golden barrier of divine power opened up, blocking the surging seawater. Human. Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched, and he asked with some doubt. Although the guardians of the heavenly gates had indeed sent many people through the one-way transmission array that the eldest son of the Dragon King of the East Sea had brought to the Tianwu continent, Lin Yuan was certain that there weren't any powerful existences that had come to the Endless Sea. After all, the transmission array was one of the formations and required a large amount of energy to operate. The length of the transmission distance and the strength of the person transmitting it would affect the consumption of energy. Constructing a transmission array from the Tianwu continent to the depths of the Endless Sea would require an astronomical number of spirit stones. In addition to the various materials and items needed to inscribe the formation plate, it would probably take up 1/3 of the dragon race of the Four Seas. Lin Yuan definitely wouldn't be able to find all of them. Thus, he chose the simplest method, which was to directly use the power of incense to supply the energy consumption of the transmission array. Staring at the interface, he knew what level of practitioners the guardians of the heavenly gates had sent. Chapter 869. This young man did not arrive at the boundless sea through the teleportation formation. Either he directly tore open the void with his cultivation, and then relied on his strong physical body to face the spatial turbulence and arrive at the boundless sea in a way that was close to teleportation, or he was originally in the deep sea of the boundless sea and just did not show up before. Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and said expressionlessly, "Even if that demon king tired himself to death, he might not even be able to touch me. Can this be considered as me owing you a favor? Although you can kill me like crushing a chicken or a dog, isn't your words too laughable?" At this moment, the young man had completely walked out of the void crack, and Lin Yuan also saw his full appearance. His facial features were exquisite like a carefully carved sculpture, and his face was a little pale, as if he was injured. He was wearing a blood-red robe, and there was a fiery red crystal gourd hanging at his waist. The gourd was 3 feet and 3 inches wide, almost wider than his waist. The most important thing was that Lin Yuan could not smell any familiar smell from his aura. It was not like a human, but there was no demonic aura. Ha 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 ha, the favor I was talking about was not referring to that ant just now. The young man in red laughed, as if he was half amused by Lin Yuan. He did not straighten his back for a long time, but his voice was getting colder and colder. "Dragon King, if you need it, you say that you are from the demon court, but if you don't, you cut ties with us. Aren't you also from the origin? Do you really think that there is cause and effect in the world?" Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He gritted his teeth and looked at the young man in red. He said in a deep voice, "May I ask?" "Oh, I was careless. I forgot to introduce myself to the Dragon King. I'm a red cloud. After the ancient times, the unluckiest guy in the primeval world that you've been talking about is just me." The young man in red patted the fiery red gourd at his waist. Although he did not say his name, he seemed to be very sure that Lin Yuan knew who he was. Red Cloud. The most unlucky guy in the primordial world. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He really did know who this guy was. The red-clothed young man in front of him had a great background. He was once a guest of the Purple Cloud Palace and was in the same class as the 6 saints of the Untainted Land, the Eastern Emperor Tai, Emperor Jun, Zenyuanzi, Kuanping, and other heavyweights of the Untainted Land. Moreover, he was famous for being a nice guy. Most of the big shots of the Untainted Land were his friends, and Zenyuanzi, who was called the ancestor of earthly immortals, was his best friend. After Hongjuan's preaching, Red Cloud could have become a sage. However, he believed Xuandi's nonsense and gave his position to him. As a result, Xuandi turned around and asked Jian to take Kuanping's position. As a result, there were 2 Western sages among the 6 saints of the Untainted Land. Although Red Cloud regretted waking up to Xuandi's nonsense, he was an honest man and did not take it seriously. However, the other unlucky guy was not so good-tempered. After all, Kuanping, who was called the Demon Master in the Untainted Land, could not be an honest man. On the one hand, he could not defeat Western sages who had become sages. On the other hand, Kuanping found Red Cloud and forced him to hand over the Hongmeng immortal qi given by Hongjun. Although Red Cloud was an honest man, he would not be bullied again and again. Therefore, they fought. In the end, Red Cloud was defeated by Kuanping and his body was destroyed. His remaining primordial spirit escaped into the netherworld and wanted to reincarnate. However, he was targeted by Ancestor Mingi, who wanted to eat Red Cloud's primordial spiritual treasure to improve his cultivation. If Red Cloud did not have the innate spiritual treasure 99 soul-dissipating gourd to protect him, a mighty figure who almost became a sage would have disappeared. However, didn't Red Cloud enter the samsara? Why did he appear in the Tianwu continent? Lin Yuan slightly narrowed his eyes and glanced at Red Cloud's face. He felt a little uneasy. After all, Red Cloud's 99 soul-dissipating gourd was not to be trifled with. Even Kuanping and Ancestor Mingi suffered a loss when they did not notice it. Even if Red Cloud was attacked by Kuanping and Ancestor Mingi one after another like the legends in the Untainted Land, he could only rely on the innate spiritual treasure to enter the samsara or escape to the Tianwu continent. However, after so many years, Red Cloud's divine power was not to be underestimated. He might have reached the upper limit of the Tianwu world. Coupled with the innate spiritual treasure, his combat capability was not to be underestimated. Even if Lin Yuan relied on the system, he didn't dare to say that he was comparable to the Demon Master Kuanping and Ancestor Mingi. If they really fought, wouldn't Red Cloud Daoist kill him in seconds? Senior Red Cloud. Lin Yuan bowed his head slightly and lowered his posture. He asked tentatively, "How do you want to calculate the karma?" If he could not win, he would admit defeat. Furthermore, karma was not something that could be avoided with strength. It was like a farmer plowing in spring and harvesting in autumn. Unless there was a natural disaster that could not be stopped, he would be able to reap the harvest. No matter how conceited Lin Yuan was, he did not dare to say that his strength was comparable to the Almighty who escaped from the Untainted Land. It was like the difference between a farmer and a natural disaster. In the entire primordial world, Hongjun was probably the only one who had the confidence to say that. Lin Yuan was still very far from that realm. However, when Lin Yuan spoke, he also heavily enunciated the word cause and effect. It was true that he was not a match for Red Cloud. He had to repay the karma that he had. However, on the other hand, he also had a great karma. The system had pulled him back from the state of near death and reconstructed a snake body for him with its supreme power. This was also considered karma. What he needed to repay was to eliminate Hongjun, the existence who stole the heavenly Tao. If Red Cloud had any evil thoughts towards him, this karma would descend and the heavenly Tao's anger would not be easy to bear. After all, even Hongjun had a headache over this incomplete heavenly Tao's origin, let alone these existences who had barely escaped from the Untainted Land after going through so many hardships. Not to mention karma, Lin Yuan was even more afraid of Red Cloud. However, when it came to karma, Lin Yuan thought that even if Red Cloud had twice the courage, he would not dare to do anything to him. Daoist Red Cloud glanced up and down at Lin Yuan, and the corners of his mouth held a slight smile. He said in a deep voice, "The Dragon King misunderstood this poor Daoist. Today, this poor Daoist came to find the Dragon King, not to settle accounts with the Dragon King. I just want to ask the Dragon King, is the flag of the demon court useful?" "This is naturally very useful." Lin Yuan hesitated for a moment but still nodded honestly. He did not expect that the demon court that he casually made up actually existed. Even though they had hidden in the dark of the world, they were still able to make the cultivators and demonic beasts of this world fear them. If he had not used this tiger skin previously, his journey might not have been smooth. Based on the methods that he had revealed previously, if he did not have this tiger skin of the demon court, it would not be strange if the guardian of the heavenly gate captured him and dissected him for research. Then why not continue to use it? The smile on Red Cloud's face deepened, and a look of anticipation appeared in his eyes. Chapter 870. Lin Yuan was slightly stunned. He looked at Taoist Red Cloud with a very strange look and did not take the opportunity to answer. The demon court was not destroyed by a strong enemy. They just hid in this world and no longer ruled the cultivation world. They even gave up most of the ways to obtain cultivation resources. This showed that the time when the demon court showed its power was actually when they were at their weakest. After those powerful figures who escaped from the untainted land recovered their vitality, they naturally looked down on ordinary cultivation resources and did not continue to publicize their existence in a high-profile manner. When Lin Yuan borrowed the name of the demon court, he did not think so much. The demon court's attitude towards him was also very strange. It seemed that they had not heard anything about Lin Yuan at all. They did not let anyone get in touch with him, nor did they really accept him. It was not until later that Lin Yuan gradually grew up that he slowly came into contact with the members of the demon court. Moreover, these guys were like shy girls, hiding their true identities. Lin Yuan had never thought that the first time he came into contact with a person from the demon court who did not hide his identity would be after he cut off his relationship with the demon court. Although you are a human after the ancient times, you and I both come from the source world. We can be considered half of the same hometown and live in a different world. When you used the demon court as a tiger's skin and made those cultivators fear you, we also turned a blind eye to it. We even seriously considered the possibility of really absorbing you. However, you grew too fast and the karma on you was too great. We had to give up. Taoist Red Cloud put his hands on his waist and floated in front of Lin Yuan with his feet off the ground. He said with a complicated expression, however, even if you only use the name of the demon court, you are still tainted with karma. It is not over just because you cut off your relationship today. You used the name of the demon court to avoid a lot of trouble for yourself, and you owe us a lot of karma. You can't afford this karma. Do you understand? Lin Yuan was silent. Back then, when he used the name of the demon court, all the forces were afraid of him. Even after coming to the Endless Sea, although the dragon clan of the Four Seas did not respect the demon court much, they did not dare to kill Lin Yuan. In a sense, the demon court did protect Lin Yuan. According to the rules of equivalent exchange, Lin Yuan had to repay this karma. In his current situation, he really could not afford to do so unless he was willing to give up on returning to the world of his previous life and take the initiative to contact the will of the Sky Martial World and become the King of Hell. The members of the demon court did not need his protection. Most of the good things in his eyes, the members of the demon court look at them, this was very King awkward. So, what we mean is, you can continue to use the name of the demon court and continue this karma. You don't have to repay it in a short period of time. In the future, you can either pay us a big one or die, and we will not ask you to pay us back. Of course, the demon court will not continue to let you bear this karma for no reason. When you return to the Hingduan mountain range, the position of the next beast master will be yours. As long as you ask, we can help you deal with some small troubles in the south of the Shenwu dynasty. Although our forces do not exist in the Endless Sea, those few true dragons, like us, came from the chaotic world, so we have some feelings for them. Taoist Red Cloud cleared his throat and said in a deep voice with an indifferent expression. Taoist Red Cloud's words were indeed like an honest man. After all, it sounded like Lin Yuan did not suffer much, and he even gained a series of benefits. However, what Taoist Red Cloud meant was that Lin Yuan owed the demon court a lot of debts. If he cut ties now, he would have to pay them back. However, with Lin Yuan's current small body, he would definitely not be able to pay them back. It was better for them to maintain this relationship, and when Lin Yuan's strength was enough in the future, he would pay them a big one. What do you mean? Do you think I'm stupid? It's hard to say how strong I will be in the future, but I will definitely not be worse than Taoist Red Cloud and Demon Master Kunping when they were at their peak. I can even wrestle with the 6 sages of the untainted land. If I don't have such strength, I won't even be qualified to look at Hongjun, let alone destroy Hongjun. Lin Yuan's eyes were a little strange, but he did not refuse directly. After all, Taoist Red Cloud was obviously threatening him. After saying those words, he did not look at Lin Yuan directly, but kept playing with the soul-dispersing gourd hanging on his waist. Seeing that Lin Yuan did not answer for a long time, the corners of Red Cloud Taoist's mouth curled into a wry smile, and he said, "I have said that I am really not very good at being a villain. You see, this kid is not scared by me at all." This sentence did not seem to be directed at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan did not show it on his face, but he sneered in his heart. Taoist Red Cloud is not good at being a bad guy. There was a saying in his previous life, when an honest man is angry, you are not even qualified to kneel down. Ordinary people might be flattering themselves by saying such words, but Taoist Red Cloud, who was willing to give up his position as a sage, was undoubtedly an honest man in the untainted world. To be honest, such a person was worthy of admiration, because the creatures in the untainted world were either the sky demon god, creatures evolved from innate spiritual roots, or all kinds of things that had achieved Tao and taken human form. There were so many of them together, but few of them had a bottom line of morality or a gentle character. Basically, all the creatures in the untainted world did what they did for themselves. In such an environment, only killing and robbing could make oneself stronger and survive smoothly. If it were Lin Yuan living in the untainted world, he would only become a complete villain. He would not even bother to pretend to be a good guy. Taoist Red Cloud was no different from an alien, and aliens usually did not have a good ending. His experience also proved this point. After experiencing a series of events, Taoist Red Cloud was called the most unlucky guy in the untainted world, but now he was definitely an honest man who was angry. Once this kind of person became evil, he would be thousands of times more horrible than those who were originally evil. However, if Taoist Red Cloud was really an honest man, he would have been eaten alive. But after facing the demon master Kunping and ancestor Mingi, he still managed to escape and even took the opportunity to escape from the untainted world. It could be seen that Taoist Red Cloud was not a kind person. The so-called good guy was just a kind of persona he maintained. The reason why Taoist Red Cloud gave up his position as a sage was that he had seen through Hongjuan's intention and did not want to be controlled by him. It was not excessive to think highly of such a person, especially when he was standing on the opposite side of himself. A slight contempt was enough to kill him. Chapter 871. I understand. You're a pragmatist. Back then, when the demon court was useful to you, we didn't ask for payment. Now that the demon court is dispensable to you, you'll definitely resist from the bottom of your heart if we ask you to pay us back. However, Taoist Red Cloud's voice paused for a moment, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Where there's a cause, there's an effect. That's unavoidable. Besides, even if you don't owe us a cause, we'll still find a way to let you have a cause and effect with us. A heaven's chosen one like you is on the same side as us. Helping you or even obeying you is not something we have to do, but it'll still bring us great benefits. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yuan roughly understood what Taoist Red Dust was trying to say. Taoist Red Dust was trying to tell Lin Yuan that from the perspective of fighting against Hongjun, they were originally comrades. However, for existences like Taoist Red Dust who had managed to escape from the untainted world with great difficulty, it was already extremely difficult for them to muster the courage to fight against Hongjun, not to mention their lack of ability. Therefore, organizations like the Demon Court, which were made up of untainted world creatures, would usually conceal their identities and blend into the indigenous groups of the untainted world after taking root in other worlds. However, concealing one's identity was obviously not what these untainted world creatures wanted, and certainly not something that Hongjun could accept. At present, these existences who had escaped from the untainted world were not in Hongjun's eyes. That was because one day, the incomplete origin of the heavenly way was still wandering in the sea of bitterness, looking for suitable heaven's chosen one to form an army to fight against Hongjun. Although the two sides were not equal in strength, it seemed that Hongjun could not do anything to the system in the short term. According to the records in the all-being scripture, Hongjun had stolen the heavenly Tao and become a supreme being. He could even make the saints who had attained origin primordial, or the divine kings of some powerful divine system, work for him. But in essence, he was still a thief. As long as the system existed, Hongjun would not be able to fully control the way of heaven. Not to mention touching the higher power of rules, even the operation of changing the way of cultivation from God to immortal was half coaxed and half deceived. After a long time of settling, the cultivators who had passed the God investiture tribulation completely lost their threat to the old primitive creatures. Even the unorthodox ways were affected. It was well known that the cultivation world had developed for so many years, but among the magic treasures, the most powerful ones were those with the words primordial chaos in front. Even those with the words postnatal chaos were many times more powerful than those made by the cultivation world later on. Was this reasonable? It was illogical. Just like the history of human evolution, it could even be referred to as the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. With the passage of time, technology in all aspects would certainly become more and more powerful. The knowledge recorded by the predecessors would be constantly supplemented and expanded, or even directly overthrown, and then a series of more powerful products would be derived. After such a long time, why was the cultivation world as still as a pool of stagnant water, and even less developed than before? Obviously, it was all Hongjun's credit. Because Hongjun was afraid, he was afraid of the revenge of the way of heaven, and he was afraid that everything would be out of his control. For these immortal beings, once they became losers, what awaited them would be countless times more terrible than death. Once Hongjun left the untainted world, his power would be constantly weakened. Although the weakest one could be compared to a sage, the way of heaven, which was temporarily out of the control of Hongjun, would quickly awaken its consciousness and welcome back the missing part of the origin. At that time, even if Hongjun returned to the untainted world, it would be difficult for him to steal the way of heaven again. Instead, he would be entangled by the heavenly tribulations again and again until he died completely, or until he regained control of the way of heaven again. More importantly, once Hongjun lost his invincible strength in the untainted world and was entangled by the heavenly tribulations, would the 6 sages, who seemed to be loyal now, still respectfully call him teacher? Anyway, from Lin Yuan's point of view, the answer was definitely no. Rather than saying that the 6 sages of the untainted world were Hongjun's disciples, it was more appropriate to say that they were managers selected by Hongjun. Putting aside those complicated calculations, they were even more like Hongjun's dogs. The meaning of their existence was to take care of the untainted world for Hongjun, hunt down those who had escaped from the untainted world, and at the same time, investigate the whereabouts of the system, and provide a large amount of incense power to Hongjun. In the end, although the so-called 6 sages of the untainted world sounded powerful, their lives were in Hongjun's hands. Before Hongjun stole the way of heaven, although there were also a few sages in the untainted world, they could directly attain the origin and become sages by themselves. They did not need to rely on Hongjun's charity to become sages. From the beginning, this game belonged to the way of heaven and Hongjun. No matter how powerful the others were in those myths and legends, they were just chess pieces in the hands of Hongjun or the way of heaven. How could Taoist Red Cloud not be afraid? How could he not be afraid? The game between the way of heaven and Hongjun had lasted for countless years. No one knew when the winner would be decided. When they escaped from the untainted world, it was equivalent to breaking up with Hongjun. If they did not stand on the side of the way of heaven, when the winner was decided, no one would tolerate them. Even if Hongjun was willing to accept them in order to deal with the way of heaven, why did they bother to take out the untainted world? Their position had been determined from the moment they left the untainted world. Even they themselves did not believe that they would help neither side and conceal their identities. After all, Hongjun and the way of heaven were playing a game with the heavens and realms as a chessboard. They were just chess pieces on the chessboard. With their own efforts, they could decide what level of chess pieces they were on the chessboard, but they could not jump out of the chessboard with their own strength. Lin Yuan lowered his head slightly and closed his different-colored eyes slightly. He said in a deep voice, "Senior, you're right. I agree with the theory of karma, but I don't like to take advantage of others, nor do I like to be taken advantage of by others. I'll pay you back what I owe you. If you want something else, I'd rather die than agree." Speaking of this, Lin Yuan's eyes slightly narrowed and he said with a hideous smile, "Anyway, you don't dare to kill me. I don't intend to form a good relationship with you." Regarding Lin Yuan's act of acting shamelessly because of the great karma, Red Cloud Taoist stared at Lin Yuan with his eyes wide open and his mouth agape. Chapter 872. What kind of world was the untainted land? At the beginning of the universe, only the legendary 3,000 chaotic demon gods could be counted as living beings. According to the records in the people's scripture, the so-called 3,000 chaotic demon gods were actually intelligent beings derived from the 3,000 great ways. They could be counted as derivatives of the rules. For example, Pangu represented force, Shurchen represented time, and Yang Mei represented space. In his previous life, it was said that Hongjun and Luo Ho were also among the 3,000 chaotic demon gods. The former represented immortals, and the latter represented demons. However, this was not recorded in the people's scripture. According to Lin Yuan's understanding of the cultivation of the untainted land, at least before Hongjun stole the way of heaven and changed the cultivation of the untainted land, the concepts of immortals and demons did not exist in the world. Even Pangu called himself a Taoist. After all, at that time, other than the 3,000 chaotic demon gods, who were derived from the rules, most of them were beings who had been enlightened by the rules, like Taoist Red Cloud. From the demon gods to the beasts, all of them were running around for survival. Morality, which only existed or was useful in a society ruled by law, was not applicable in the untainted land. Taoist Red Cloud was given the primordial immortal chi by Hongjun. If it were not for Western Buddhism, he would have been reserved as one of the 6 sages of the untainted land. Even in the untainted land where experts were everywhere, Taoist Red Cloud was a big shot among the big shots. However, what about his own scheme to escape from the untainted land? Didn't Kundi, an honest man, cheat him of the position of a sage? Kuanping, who was also Hongjun's favorite disciple, even killed him directly. Wasn't it a joke to talk about good and evil in such a bloody world? Moreover, immortals and demons were just camps. How could they be related to the rules? Moreover, in Lin Yuan's eyes, Luo Ho was just a senior who had failed to counterattack. Putting the title of demon ancestor on Luo Ho was not very auspicious. Secondly, considering the chaos of the untainted land at that time, what Luo Ho did was the basic operation of the untainted land. It was just that the ordinary creatures of the untainted land were not as powerful as him. Moreover, it was hard to say whether he was the one who had absorbed the spiritual chi from the West or was the scapegoat after his defeat. Most of the legends in his previous life were embellished and beautified. He could only borrow some of them, but not all of them. In such a world where there was no bottom line of morality, everyone had to respect the basic law when speaking and doing things. If they met someone who was more powerful than them, they had to pretend to be polite. However, judging from Taoist Red Cloud's extensive experience in making friends, there were very few people who were as shameless as Lin Yuan. Even Shen Gongbao, who had frightened countless powerful figures with his words fellow Taoist, please wait, in the God's investiture tribulation, could not be compared with Lin Yuan. After all, karma could not be avoided. If there was a cause, there must be an effect. Shen Gongbao had cheated so many people to death. In the end, he was even listed on the list of deification and use by the heavenly Lord Yuanshi to fill the North Sea. This thing was very mysterious. No one could quantify it. After all, it was to save a life. There was a difference between saving a noble's life and saving a poor's life. However, when it came to karma, who could be sure that the two lives were not the same? Therefore, Lin Yuan was the first person in history to say that he would pay back what he owed. You are a bit unreasonable. Taoist Red Cloud's lips trembled slightly. For a moment, he did not know how to organize his words. After all, what Lin Yuan said before was not false. As a heaven's chosen one, Lin Yuan had a lot of karma on him. If they did not help Lin Yuan, they would not be recognized by the way of heaven. They would be punished after the outcome was announced. However, if they obstructed or even killed Lin Yuan, the way of heaven would immediately punish them and make them pay the corresponding price. They wanted to ask Lin Yuan for more benefits. After all, who did not want to collect interest when they borrowed money these days? However, Lin Yuan had made it clear that he was willing to pay back the karma. However, he was not willing to give them a single cent more. They had no choice. If that's the case, then. Taoist Red Cloud took a deep breath and tried his best to calm himself down. Only then did he speak with a complicated expression. However, before he could finish speaking, Lin Yuan spoke first. I've said it before. I will pay back what I owe you. Therefore, you have no right to ask me to pay you back. After I step out of the gate of heaven, if anyone wants to find trouble with you, I can allow you to use my name to deter them. As for the time limit, I'll round it up to 3 years. When I step out of the gate of heaven, it will be the time for me to pay back the karma. As long as it is within my ability, I can protect you for 3 years. You. Taoist Red Cloud's face darkened. He almost subconsciously reached for the fiery red gourd at his waist. He really wanted to use his lifelong spiritual treasure to disperse Lin Yuan's soul so that he would know how to respect his seniors. However, Lin Yuan smiled and shook his head. He said, "Isn't this how you protect me? You tacitly allowed me to use your name to roam the Sky Martial continent. However, when I really met with trouble, I didn't see you do much. Do you really think that the name of the demon court is so useful? If it weren't for the fact that I had my own methods to deal with the probing again and again, I would have long been eaten up by others without leaving any scraps." At this point, Lin Yuan slowly raised the tip of his tail and pointed it at Taoist Red Cloud. He sneered, "Speaking of which, you guys have profited. Not only are you under my protection for a longer period of time, but the cultivators and demonic beasts of the Sky Martial continent might not respect you as much as before, but they definitely won't find trouble with you. However, it's different for those who find trouble with you. Even if they are not experts from the Great Wasteland world, they are all almighty experts who escaped from the Great Wasteland world." Taoist Red Cloud was so angry that his liver hurt. However, he did not know how to refute Lin Yuan. Because to Lin Yuan, the existence of the demon court was just a tiger skin that would not cause people to flip the table. Those who coveted Lin Yuan's secrets were still testing him again and again. Furthermore, Lin Yuan had basically solved all of them by himself. They had only done some finishing work or brushing the edges. It was indeed not considered a big karma. Just like what Lin Yuan had said, if this karma was analyzed like this, it was indeed them who had profited. But the problem was that this theory of cause and effect wasn't his intention at all. If they could not join the camp of the heavenly Tao, how long would they be able to live? Dragon King, aren't you going a little too far by doing this? Taoist Red Cloud's face darkened. His eyes kept turning as if he was calculating something. Chapter 873. Next, are you going to tell me that cause and effect can't be so simple? Not everything can be done as a deal. Or are you going to say that if you can't achieve your initial goal with me, you'll die sooner or later? Why don't you take me with you? Lin Yuan shook his head and showed a sarcastic smile to Red Cloud Taoist. He jokingly said, then let's give it a try. I should have died a long time ago. Although I am a little unwilling, it is still a profit to be able to take away a powerful person who is famous in the wilderness before I die. Taoist Red Cloud was speechless. Was this Black Jiao really not afraid of death? Or, was he a lunatic in essence? Taoist Red Cloud was definitely not willing to do such an extreme one-for-one exchange. Life forms often had a common characteristic: the closer they were to death, the more they cherished their lives. For example, there were always people who kept saying how they were not afraid of death, but when it came to the moment of life and death, they might be the first to break down. For existences like Red Cloud, who had lived for an unknown number of years, living had already become a kind of obsession. In other words, this was a common problem for all cultivators. This so-called cultivation was nothing more than going against the heavens and taking one's life in order to achieve immortality. Lin Yuan, however, is the unparalleled exception. His obsession was not to live, but to take revenge. Taoist Red Cloud was seen through by Lin Yuan at a glance. After thinking carefully for a moment, he raised his hands and said, since we can't reach an agreement, let's put aside karma for the time being and talk about other things. What do you think? Lin Yuan did not speak. He just tilted his head and motioned for Taoist Red Cloud to continue. It was just that he was haunted by his inner demons, so he would occasionally lose control of his words and actions. Especially when he was provoked, he would appear paranoid and crazy. However, this did not mean that he had become a complete lunatic. These creatures who had escaped from the untainted land back then were natural allies. For Hong Jun, who was extremely paranoid and worried that the later cultivators would threaten him and even change his path of cultivation, these creatures of the untainted land who had betrayed him were definitely on the list of those who had to be executed. It was just that he did not have the time to deal with them for the time being. Only a fool would refuse to help a friend who wanted to help him. However, Lin Yuan's attitude was always the same. If he was willing to talk nicely, then talk nicely. If he was not willing to talk nicely, then he would directly flip the table and be done with it. He had to put on a sour face as if he owed hoo-hoo. Lin Yuan only replied with 4 words, do it and be done with it. You need help right now. The northern frontier is under the pressure of the sky demon. It might not be obvious in a short period of time, but as time goes by, the foundation of the northern frontier will be shaken. The ordinary people who can't survive will sell their land to the officials of the northern frontier and the instructors of the academies. It won't be long before the noble families and sects that you have suppressed with great difficulty show up again. Together with the remaining old noble families, these new forces will be even more difficult to deal with. Even if you remove them, it will be like cutting off meat from the northern frontier. Also, the academy system that you painstakingly set up will probably be wiped out in the long war. Those lost talents that you found with great difficulty, whether it is for a good future, to repay your kindness, or simply to obey the orders of their superiors, they will all become the army's reserves and rush to the battlefield with a slim chance of survival. Once these people die in battle, who knows how long it will take for you to find a group of people who are worth nurturing, commoners, or even those who are dissatisfied with the old aristocratic families. I'm not saying that you won't be able to wait that long, but I feel that by that time, you probably won't need these low-level helpers anymore. Also, the 6 great empires have been dissatisfied with you for a long time. The Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce has always controlled the Hingduan mountain range, which is the center of the Tianwu continent, to trade. Whether it is profits or benefits, it is countless times better than passing through the territories of the various empires and following the borders of the sea. However, the Hingduan mountain range's monsters don't trust them, and they don't dare to join forces to attack the Hingduan mountain range. Therefore, they can only watch as your Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce takes away large amounts of resources from their territories. However, the problem is that the Hingduan mountain range doesn't trust the northern frontier, but you. Once something happens to you, the Hingduan mountain range will immediately seal off all routes to the northern frontier. Not only will the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce suffer a loss, but the Shuangjin dynasty and the Qing River Empire will also definitely take this opportunity to launch a war on the northern frontier and plunder the resources stored in the northern frontier to strengthen themselves. If you are trapped in the endless sea for too long, the morale of the people in the northern frontier will definitely waver. Even if the sky demon is a huge threat, they won't immediately cause chaos. However, the sky demon will be wiped out sooner or later, especially after you have caused such a huge commotion in the endless sea. No matter how greedy they are, they won't dare to continue testing your bottom line in the short term. Thus, the sky demon's problem will soon be dealt with by the Heavenly Gate Guardians. It is only a matter of time before he is wiped out. Once the sky demon is wiped out, the northern frontier will fall into internal strife. As a heaven's chosen one, you shouldn't be cultivating the way of immortality modified by that old guy, right? Furthermore, you are not a chaos demon god that existed before the eldritch world was created. You don't have innately powerful strength or a spiritual treasure. Isn't the reason why you can improve so quickly because of the existence of the northern frontier? Daoist Red Cloud placed his hands behind his back. His face was calm as if he had already seen through everything. He said in a deep voice, "Some people think that the northern region is just an amalgamation of interests and that it's only because of your existence that the arrogant people in the northern region are subdued. However, they clearly haven't thought about the fact that it wasn't you who subdued the northern region, but the northern region that made you." Speaking of this, Taoist Red Cloud seemed to have found something that could be used against him. He smiled like a fox that had stolen a chicken and said in a low voice, "The northern frontier is very important to you. You can't afford to lose it, right?" Lin Yuan opened his mouth but didn't refute. It wasn't that Taoist Red Cloud was right. It was just that Lin Yuan simply wanted to see what Taoist Red Cloud was up to. Did he rely on the northern frontier to get to where he is today? Sorry, you don't know anything about real hacking. However, thinking about it, those who didn't understand the way of gods wouldn't understand the significance of the northern frontier to Lin Yuan. Taoist Red Cloud, who understood the way of gods too well, naturally misunderstood the significance of the northern frontier to Lin Yuan. After all, no matter how big the hole in his brain was, he couldn't imagine that Lin Yuan didn't grow according to the system's arrangements. Instead, he braced himself and imitated the path of the totem ancient god, striving to break free from the system's control. Chapter 874. Black Jiao, you might have misunderstood the degree of deterrence your great karma has on us. You have to know that although the rules are powerful, as long as we are willing, we can find countless loopholes. Just like that old thing, didn't he succeed in controlling the heavenly Tao after painstaking planning? Although he didn't reach a perfect state, in the untainted world, he was truly invincible. Although we don't dare to attack you directly, we can indirectly hurt you based on the current situation. For example, if the demon court steps forward to stop those who are eager to participate in the war against the heavenly demons and try to form a good relationship with you, the war in the northern region will be infinitely prolonged. It will only stop obediently when we are willing to stop it. However, in essence, we didn't violate the rules because we didn't attack you. We only stopped your reinforcements and let you continue to face the sky demon's attacks alone. At this point, the smile on Daoist Red Cloud's face became even wider. He continued, "Let me make it clear first. I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling you a fact. Even if the demon court goes into hiding for another 10 million years, as long as these two words appear, all the cultivators and monsters in this world will be silent. Do you understand?" Lin Yuan continued to remain silent. Although there was no lack of exaggeration in Taoist Red Cloud's words, in a sense, he was not scaring Lin Yuan. Back when Lin Yuan was still a monster at the spirit awakening realm, when he casually mentioned the tiger skin of the demon court, many people were already afraid of attacking the rat for fear of breaking the vases. They even only dared to hide and secretly observe. After Lin Yuan grew up, he exposed more and more secrets, attracting more and more greedy people. Even forces at the level of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had the guts to flip the table. Later on, many Heavenly Gate Guardians took out resources from the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce to reward Lin Yuan, hoping to use this method to demonstrate their power. The tiger skin called the Demon Court was becoming less and less intimidating to greedy people. That was indeed an indisputable fact. After all, the Demon Court had been hidden from the world for many years. Other than the old cultivators of the past, few in the new generation had even heard of the Demon Court. In addition, Lin Yuan's identity as a member of the Demon Court was something only he said himself. Although Lin Yuan had taken out many trump cards to deal with the probing, none of them could prove that he was from the Demon Court. So the more trump cards he took out, the more greedy people he attracted. This time in the Endless Sea, although Lin Yuan had spent 3 million incense power to invite a big shot who had killed so many people in the Sky Marshal continent to help him, it was only enough to deter those greedy people for a short period of time. After all, the white-robed man was not a permanent resident. Some cultivators who were stuck at a bottleneck and could not take even half a step forward were extremely terrifying. Just like Taoist Red Dust of the Red Dust Society, he was willing to sell the entire Red Dust Society to Lin Yuan for a second-rate cultivation method that even Lin Yuan himself was not sure about. It was possible that those greedy people would develop inner demons because they could not take a step forward, or because their lifespan was about to run out, and they would want to take a gamble and find trouble with Lin Yuan. It was not that Lin Yuan was not terrifying, but the prestige that the Demon Court had accumulated over time since it took root in this world was far from what Lin Yuan, who had not even been in the Sky Marshal continent for 3 years, could compare to. If the Demon Court did not appear, they would naturally not feel it. However, if the Demon Court appeared, those great cultivators who had lived for countless years would be the first to bow down to them. And then, Lin Yuan still maintained his posture with his head tilted, waiting for Taoist Red Cloud to continue. But on the other hand, if you cooperate with us, the Guardians of the Heaven Gate will no longer be a problem for you. They will soon cut into the rear of the Sky Demon and provide strong and powerful support for the northern frontier, greatly alleviating the current predicament of the northern frontier. At the same time, the foundation that you have laid in the Endless Sea will also be protected. Although the dragon race of the Four Seas is constantly weakening, especially now, they are almost on the verge of extinction. However, the heritage left behind by any powerful race cannot be underestimated. If the Dragon King is willing, the insignificant Sea Demon Guild and the Outer Sea Demon Beasts are just clay chickens and pottery dogs. As long as you nod your head and are willing to cooperate with us, all the difficulties you face will be easily solved. When you unify the Sky Marshal world, refine the entire world into your divine kingdom, and repair the 3 realms and 6 paths, in this world, there will be no one who can be your opponent. The smile on Taoist Red Cloud's face became even wider. He extended his right hand towards Lin Yuan and said, "The only price you need to pay is to admit that we are your comrades. That is all. Reject him." Without waiting for Lin Yuan to ponder whether there were any traps, the system decisively interrupted Lin Yuan's thoughts. Previously, when you first arrived in this world, although you used the tiger skin of the Demon Court, the Demon Court you mentioned was not them. The trouble that you encountered was also solved by you. It was only a while ago that they realized that if they continued to ignore it, there would not be any karma between the two of you. Therefore, the members of the Demon Court secretly intervened and helped you solve some problems that were neither big nor small. For this kind of karma, the proposal that you gave previously is enough to repay them. They can even be said to have profited greatly. However, They are not satisfied with this and want to cooperate with you at this time to make you admit that they are your comrades. But think about it carefully. What do they need to pay to cooperate with you at this time? Your actions in the endless sea are enough to make the various forces fear you. Even if the demon court did not intervene, the guardians of the heavenly gate would not dare to continue testing you. Even if the monsters in the endless sea covet your gains, they would have to be obedient for a period of time before making a fuss. In fact, they don't have to do anything. They just have to greet you and use the name of the demon court and your own deterrence to complete these operations. Even without their interference, your previous deterrence was enough to exchange for a period of stability. Do you think that this period of time will be very short? That's right. That's right. Or do you think that you have not improved at all during this period of time? They are treating you as a fool, and they are treating me as a fool. There was no joy or sorrow on Lin Yuan's face, but he was silently communicating with the system in his heart. But the problem is that a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. This is an eternal truth. If I directly reject them. Chapter 875. So what if I fall out with you? Don't forget that there is an upper limit to one's strength in this world. No matter how strong these fellows were in the past, they had to suppress their strength in this world. Otherwise, it would cause the world to collapse. Even if they were not killed by the rules, it would cause the world to collapse. Everyone would be finished together. Furthermore, it's hard to say if they can break through the limits of the rules and use strength that exceeds the upper limit of this world. After so many years, I'm still angry when I see these bastards again. They don't want to do anything at all and want to reap the benefits. If it weren't for these fellows not doing anything, how could a mere Hongjun steal the heavenly way? The system cursed. If it had a physical body, it would have jumped up and cursed. Lin Yuan blinked and felt that the water in the primordial world was deeper than he had thought. However, the system was mainly cursing these almighty beings of the primordial world for not doing anything back then. As soon as Hongjun gained power, they immediately planned to escape from the primordial world. Obviously, it did not intend to continue revealing anything to Lin Yuan. From the information that he had obtained, Hongjun did not steal the heavenly way overnight. Most of the creatures of the primordial world knew about it. However, other than the creatures of the primordial world who had sided with Hongjun, the other creatures of the primordial world were basically in a state of not doing anything. Otherwise, the heavenly way would not have been so weak that it was forced to separate a piece of its origin and escape into the sea of misery, allowing Hongjun to steal the primordial heavenly way. If not for the fact that the game between the heavenly way and Hongjun had reached its climax and that Hongjun was continuously sending creatures of the primordial world to other worlds to track down the traces of the heavenly way, these escaped creatures of the primordial world would most likely still be playing dead in a corner of a certain world. Senior Hong Yun's words are reasonable. The northern frontier is my foundation, so no matter what, I have to protect the northern frontier. However, the question is, why do I have to borrow your hands? Lin Yuan curled up his body and said meaningfully, the demon court can order the guardians of the heavenly gate to do things just by opening their mouths. I definitely have no doubts, but how do you know that I must be inferior to you? In this period of time, I'm afraid that I have more face in the eyes of the heavenly gate guardian than your demon court. The system's words reminded Lin Yuan. The martial heaven world wasn't complete. The cultivators and sea demons here all had a limit to their strength. The strongest were only at the threshold of the true God realm. They were far from being undying and indestructible. Even the Four Seas dragon race, which had once flourished, had to rely on their own Joss flames to barely extend their lives. When the prehistoric creatures gave them cultivation methods and entered this world, they could indeed destroy this world with a wave of their hands. Suppressing the cultivators and demonic beasts in this world was as easy as flipping their hands. But now, countless years later, could prehistoric creatures still easily suppress cultivators and demonic beasts? How was that possible? The strongest cultivators and demonic beasts in the martial heaven world were at the threshold of the true God realm. Most of the prehistoric creatures were above this realm, but they could only use this level of strength in the martial heaven world. Their only advantage was that their accompanying spirit treasures like the 99 soul-scattering gourd were much stronger than the magic treasures refined by the undeveloped refining methods of the martial heaven world. However, this wasn't the difference between a stone axe and a machine gun. The cultivators of the martial heaven world weren't pushovers. It was fine if they didn't have the ability in the past, but now that they had the ability, who would be willing to have a retired emperor above their heads? If he agreed to cooperate with the demon court, not only would the demon court not have to pay anything, he could even use the commotion that Lin Yuan had caused to extend his life. Even if Lin Yuan left the martial heaven world, the guardians of the heaven gate would still be afraid and continue to acknowledge the demon court as the retired emperor. At that time, no matter if they asked for resources from the guardians of the heaven gate or went from the dark to the light, there wouldn't be many who would dare to stand out and criticize them. Even if such people stood out, they still had Lin Yuan's promise to protect them. Although Lin Yuan was only borrowing their name, and recently, the demon court had secretly interfered with the direction of some matters, but if Lin Yuan were to step out of the heaven gate, even if it was just a name or a little interference, it would be enough to make the natives of this world keep quiet out of fear. Shifting the risk to Lin Yuan, they didn't need to pay anything and just waited for the benefits. There was such a good thing. The demon court's actions were just as the system had said. They were treating Lin Yuan like a fool. After being questioned by Lin Yuan, Daoist Red Cloud's face was a little embarrassed. He said with a cold expression, "Dragon King, what do you mean by this? Are you doubting the demon court's ability? I've already said it very clearly. As long as the Dragon King is willing to cooperate with us, all the problems that are troubling you now can be solved immediately. However, if the Dragon King is unwilling to cooperate, that means we have to die. Aren't you afraid that we? I'm just very curious. If the demon court forces the guardians of the heaven gate to stop the series of deployments against the sky demon and let them continue to exhaust the northern frontier, then I directly declare war on the demon court. Senior, which side do you think the guardians of the heaven gate will stand on?" Lin Yuan smiled and interrupted Daoist Red Cloud. The smile on Daoist Red Cloud's face froze. If this was a complete world, the guardians of the heaven gate were not even ants to them. However, the problem was that this world was not complete. Lin Yuan and those indigenous creatures could not possibly fight with them outside the heaven gate. If they were unlucky and died, it would be useless no matter how high their cultivation was. Although they were in this world, they were still outsiders. Once they died, there was no chance of reincarnation. Their souls would be directly captured back to the netherworld of the chaotic world. Destroying their souls was just a thought from Hongjun. Veins popped out on Daoist Red Cloud's forehead, and his breathing gradually became heavier. If Lin Yuan was really a member of the demon court, then no matter how bold the guardians of the heaven gate were, they would not dare to challenge the demon court. However, the problem was, Lin Yuan was not a member of the demon court. Moreover, the commotion he caused in the endless sea was not small. Although the guy in the white coat only appeared for 3 minutes, the combat power he displayed was enough to sweep through the heaven martial world. In terms of combat power, the demon court was not as terrifying as the existence behind Lin Yuan. In addition, although the demon court was gradually hiding from the world, when they were tyrannical in the heaven martial world, they had accumulated a lot of old grudges with the indigenous creatures. Just look at the dragon race of the 4 seas and you would know what the demon court was like. Back then, the demon court treated the indigenous creatures of the heaven martial world like slaves. Chapter 876. In the eyes of the natives of the Tianwu world, Lin Yuan's mysterious background was not inferior to the demon court at its peak. In fact, it was even more terrifying. If Lin Yuan declared war on the demon court, the guardians of the heavenly gate would not hesitate to stand on Lin Yuan's side. I've said it before. I don't like to take advantage of others, and I don't like others taking advantage of me. If you want to talk about cooperation, we can talk about it. However, Senior Red Cloud always treats me like a fool. Isn't that inappropriate? Lin Yuan blinked his eyes and said with a smile, Senior Red Cloud is an almighty being who was born in the desolate era. You have lived for countless years longer than me. Even if you were a pig, you should have become a spirit by now. Why do I feel that Senior Red Cloud is not wise at all? Daoist Red Cloud clenched his fists and said with gritted teeth, Dragon King, does this mean that there is no room for negotiation? We can negotiate. As long as you show your sincerity, we can negotiate. Lin Yuan's eyes were overflowing with coldness as he sneered, however, Senior is not willing to pay anything. Do you really think that your old face is useful everywhere? Why don't you go back to the desolate era and see if anyone will give you some face? Good. 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 Daoist Red Cloud was so angry that he laughed. He pointed at Lin Yuan and squeezed out a voice from between his teeth, then let's wait and see. Let's see if my words today are sincere or not. Even if Daoist Red Cloud was really a good person, after being rejected by Lin Yuan time and time again, he could not put down his face. Since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality, Daoist Red Cloud snorted coldly. With a wave of his blood-red sleeve, his figure disappeared into the void behind him as if he had never appeared. I'll wait and see. Lin Yuan's face was full of a fake smile, and he said in a cold voice, it's just that it was not easy for the seniors to gain a firm foothold. Don't lose your foothold just because of a moment of anger. Although I'm a junior, I'm amenable to coaxing but not coercion. It's impossible for me to not fight back after being hit. Do you understand? As soon as he finished speaking, 7 or 8 cold snorts sounded in the void. Then, the gazes dispersed. Lin Yuan also felt much more relaxed. After all, these primitive creatures did not dare to touch him because of the great karma on him. It was not that they did not have the ability to kill him. Lin Yuan pursed his lips and stopped smiling. Only then did he swim toward the city wall that had been breached by the great old ones. The trouble from the demon court had been temporarily resolved. Next, it should be the time for both sides to roll up their sleeves and show off their muscles. However, the demon court had not appeared for a long time. Furthermore, Lin Yuan had caused such a huge commotion in the endless sea. If they wanted to rely on their words to convince the guardian of the heavenly gates to continue forming a feud with Lin Yuan, it was no different from a fool's dream. They still needed a lot of time to prepare. Now, the priority was to deal with the endless sea. As the city wall was breached, more and more demonic beasts of the endless sea could not hold back. The array set up by these mental demons had long lost its effectiveness. The eye of the god was activated, and he could observe the situation in most places in the Willow Stone Fortress. Many demonic beasts of the endless sea did not go to the city wall after dealing with the demonic beasts that had come to stall them. It was as if they were not worried that this last line of defense would be breached. Only a fool would believe that these demonic beasts had no connection with the great old ones. However, the existence of such demonic beasts was probably a common problem in civilized society. There would always be some who thought that they could play with everything in the palm of their hands just because they had some ability. Among such existences, 9 out of 10 were idiots whose ambitions were greater than their abilities. Lin Yuan was not interested in how others would deal with such existences. What he wanted to do next was to simply and violently destroy them. In any case, the living beings in the Tianwu world had reproduced for such a long time. Whether it was humans or demonic beasts, the population had swelled to the point that it was close to the limit that the world could bear. The various empires, the Hengduan Mountains, the demonic beasts of the endless sea, and various forces had always been in a state of war. The purpose of war was to reduce the population. Words like peace and prosperity did not exist in a world in such a state. Exceeding the limit of what the land could support, even if it was just one person, meant that there would be people like that person who would not be able to eat their fill. Mercy would not bring salvation, and would only cause more people to be destroyed. This world was very sick in all aspects. As time passed, more and more demonic beasts of the endless sea gathered here. After all, the current Lin Yuan was in a very awkward position in the endless sea. On one hand, they already knew that it was very difficult for them to take advantage of Lin Yuan. On the other hand, although the great old ones had been eliminated, there should still be a lot of aberrations in the endless sea, or existences that had been affected by the power of distortion but had not completed their aberrations. Without Lin Yuan's help, it would be very difficult for them to clean up these things. Moreover, if they were not careful, they might brew a disaster even more terrifying than the previous great old ones. The most important thing was that Lin Yuan was not the kind of existence without ambition. Although it was not clear what the model of Lin Yuan's city of trade was, it could be seen from the Siren Guild's recent busywork around the city of trade that the city of trade could bring huge profits. When Lin Yuan was completely tied to the Siren Guild's interests, who could get a share of the profits? As the city of trade existed longer and longer, not only did it mean that Lin Yuan had earned a lot of benefits from the endless sea, but it also meant that Lin Yuan's influence on the endless sea would grow stronger day by day, directly affecting the power structure of the various Siren clans in the deep sea area of the endless sea. They could not wait for Lin Yuan to leave, but they also hoped that Lin Yuan would clean up the aberrations. These emotions were really complicated. As for the remaining aberrations, I will deal with them. You just need to watch and think about it carefully. Why would I look for them, and if I would look for you? Lin Yuan's gaze swept across the faces of the monsters in the endless sea. His heterochromatic eyes kept showing a thoughtful look. Then he gently shook his head and his body slowly dissipated, blending into the surrounding seawater and disappearing without a trace. Most of the monsters in the endless sea present were at the Siren King realm or even the ancestor monster realm. Although they were all aquatic monsters, their comprehension of the way of water might not be as deep as Lin Yuan's talent. However, with the difference in cultivation between the two, they could forcibly stop Lin Yuan. But that was obviously meaningless. If Lin Yuan did not want to say, they could not ask a single word. They also had to pay attention to their words and deeds and not excessively stimulate Lin Yuan. Chapter 877. 4 hours later. Northern Frontier. In a Blackwater Dragon King temple near Mountain Blocking City. The huge flood dragon sculpture slowly opened its eyes. Its originally lifeless body was covered in a wriggling black liquid. It actually showed the characteristics of a living being. Every muscle was trembling and every scale was opening and closing. Patter. With a soft sound, a wooden carving scale fell off, and then there was patter. 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 More and more wooden and stone sculptures fell off. A piece of flesh the size of an adult's forearm fell to the ground. Under the gaze of a group of temple attendants who rushed over after hearing the strange noise, that piece of flesh actually twitched and gradually transformed into a little black snake. Its entire body was covered in fine black scales. It looked like the previous sculpture that had been shrunk countless times. The little black snake shook its head. Its vertical pupils slowly turned blue and white. Only then did it regain its clarity. It said in a deep voice, "There's no need to restore the statue here for the time being. Also, inform Li Zhong to come here and see me. The matter in the endless sea could be put to rest for the time being." After all, those demon kings and ancestral demons were not existences that the current Lin Yuan could contend against. On the other hand, the battle in the northern frontier had always been tense. Just as Taoist Red Cloud said, nothing could go wrong in the northern frontier. Therefore, Lin Yuan had no choice but to delegate authority to Cyrus and the divine sense clone that controlled the puppet's body. He let his main body fall into a deep sleep again and returned to the northern frontier in the form of an avatar. This time, Lin Yuan did not choose to descend. After all, it was possible that someone who was not a believer of his would appear from some corner and call out to someone. That person would be able to intercept Lin Yuan again. After all, most of the gods in the Tianwu continent were Yin gods. For example, those loyal ministers and good generals of the ancient dynasties. Their souls would not enter the cycle of reincarnation after their death. Instead, they would be sent to the shrine of gods and gods to be nourished by the power of the nation. With some exaggeration, they would become gods one after another, similar to the wild gods in Lin Yuan's previous life. If that heavenly emperor successfully established the heavenly court, he might be able to absorb these Yin gods, just like what the heavenly court did during the investiture of the gods' cataclysm. Absorbing a bit of the Yin god's true spirit into the investiture of the gods, they would always be under his control. The real deities in the untainted world were all existences who had directly attained the origin and become saints. Some were like Pan Gu, the primordial ancient demon gods. In his previous life, the gods of the heavenly court were more like slaves than gods. Just look at the Taoist disciples of Sanqing's lineage. They used talismans to communicate with the heavens. There was no lack of Dharma access in those talismans to force the gods and the heavens to do things for them. It was only later when the heavens and earth were isolated and the path of cultivation became more and more difficult that the Taoist cultivators slowly changed from being driven to inviting the gods. However, in a world without the jurisdiction of the heavenly court, these Yin gods had great authority. To ordinary people who did not know the difference, Lin Yuan was no different from those Yin gods. Therefore, in order to not be affected, Lin Yuan had no choice but to use the backup plan he had set up in the northern frontier. When Lei Fan was in charge of building the Blackwater Dragon King Temple, Lin Yuan sealed a part of his flesh and blood in each statue. After a long period of nurturing by the power of incense, these flesh and blood would awaken their own spirituality. Together with the divine will that Lin Yuan had imbued on the statues, they would be able to evolve into something similar to an external incarnation. Even if Lin Yuan's original body died, he could use these external incarnations to come back to life. To the cultivators and demonic beasts of the Tianwu world, this method was absolutely heaven-defying. However, Lin Yuan's Taoism was after all a part of the untainted world. This kind of behavior was already basic in the untainted world. For example, the Nether River Patriarch who almost ate Taoist Red Cloud was the most disgusting one. Originally, he was born from a placenta that was born in the Nether Blood Sea. He was born with great magical powers. Later on, he used his great magical powers to completely merge himself with the Nether Blood Sea. In the untainted world, he was known as long as the Blood Sea does not dry up, Nether River will not die. Preparing an external incarnation to come back to life was really a basic operation in the untainted world. Lin Yuan was just doing something that everyone would do. Compared to the Nether River Patriarch's method of merging himself with the Nether Blood Sea, Lin Yuan's method of cutting off his own flesh and separating his divine sense was not that ruthless. This time, he had activated an outer body incarnation in advance and used this method to return to the northern region. However, not only did this body not have the strength of his original body, which was at the 8th level of the desolate demon realm, it was also ridiculously weak. Even a slightly stronger beast could easily prey on him, and he still needed a large amount of Joss flames to recover his strength. However, the Joss flames in his original body had almost been used up. Although this statue had also been influenced by the Joss flames, it had not broken the seal by itself after it had developed its own spirituality. It was barely better than nothing, and would not be of much use. Therefore, before confirming his safety, Lin Yuan could only stay in this Blackwater Dragon King Temple. After all, this was mountain-blocking city, and there were many humans and demon beasts here. If he ran into someone who did not know his place, he would lose an external incarnation for nothing. Although his strength had not recovered, his flesh and blood came from his original body after all. A black snake with the blood of a flood dragon and without the ability to resist walking outside was a delicacy in the eyes of those beasts with low spiritual intelligence. Even those demonic beasts with a certain level of spiritual intelligence might not be able to overcome the greed in their hearts. Yes, I'll go right away. The temple attendant bowed to Lin Yuan and ordered the people he brought to guard the main hall. Only then did he hurriedly leave. After rounds of cleaning up in the northern frontier, those who could still work in the Blackwater Dragon King Temple were almost all existences created by Lin Yuan using the soldier creation model. Although their growth was extremely slow, their loyalty was unquestionable. Otherwise, Lin Yuan would not want these external incarnations of his to fall into the hands of those with evil intentions and become a means to suppress him. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He suddenly remembered that when he first tracked down the sky demon, he found some black liquid in the elixir of immortality. It was similar to the nether realm's black water in his hand, but there seemed to be a big difference. However, it was indeed the power of the underworld. In addition, the sky demon did not have a physical body and was only in existence with intelligence born from evil thoughts and evil thoughts. When all these clues gathered together, they pointed to the eldritch world. With a light flick of its tail, a sky demon assimilated by the nether realm's black water condensed and respectfully bowed to Lin Yuan. You don't need to answer my question. You only need to nod. Lin Yuan looked at the sky demon and said with a serious expression.